Chapter 352. Because this matter was related to the safety of the big boss, the group of mercenary guards, and Black Feather Ninja, lying in ambush in the basement, were obviously elites carefully selected from various departments. Almost 2 to 3 seconds later, a large group of people rushed out of the surrounding underground tunnels, surrounding the small pavilion with 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. In front of the group of ninjas, the leader of the Black Feather Ninja, who fought with Ryudo before, couldn't help but laugh. Ha 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 ha. Ryudo Kiryu, I'll see where you can escape to this time. Everyone, get ready to destroy the enemy. In addition to Huanen, who appeared here with a group of ninjas, Lin Hannah, who was in charge of commanding the mercenary guards, also conveyed orders to her subordinates in a cold tone. But there was a slight flicker in her eyes. What's going on? What's going on here, Ryudo-kun? You and Sama have only met for a few minutes, and you've already fallen out with her? Isn't it too fast? In fact, in Lin Hannah's view, this time Ryudo came to Sama with sincerity. The man, who was usually slovenly, even changed his clothes, and brought a bouquet of fresh flowers from his room. That was all there was to it. But why? Why did the two sides fall out with each other in such a short time? Lin Hannah didn't understand this problem at all. But since she was the head of the security department, she could only command her subordinates to point their guns at Ryudo. Of course, it wasn't just Lin Hannah who didn't understand. In fact, even Ryudo himself was confused. What's going on? What's going on here, Sama? Last time, I came here casually wearing clothes, and I didn't have any flowers in my hand. My attitude wasn't gentle at all. But you entertained me with a smile. And this time, when I came to ask you for a date, I was so sincere. I specially changed my clothes and collected a bouquet of flowers, but your reaction was to tell me to go away. Who did I offend in the end? Which part of it is not to your liking? Ryudo's handsome face suddenly became very depressed when he was surrounded by the 2 ministers of the intelligence department and the guard department, as well as hundreds of elite members. He was not depressed because he was surrounded by so many enemies, but because he was rejected by That's right, Ryudo Kiryu, am here to confess my love to you. In the end, not only did you not accept it, you even directly asked someone to scatter my ashes. Am I that detestable? At this time, Ryudo could only sigh and say, if you want to reject me, you should at least let me know where I went wrong, right? What went wrong? You still have the nerve to ask. Young-ji showed a disdainful expression when she heard that. She said coldly, take a piss and look at yourself. You're dressed like a toad that has become a demon. You're so gaudy, and have no masculinity at all. I feel like vomiting when I see you. Bah. The last sentence wasn't Young-ji's adjective. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, she probably would have found a place to vomit. The current dragon fight was that disgusting in her eyes. Trash, 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 trash. Even wanted to find a small piece of paper filled with 1,000 pieces of trash, and directly slap it on Ryudo's smelly face that thought he was handsome, to let him know what kind of trash he was. Toad. Toad became a spirit. This is too insulting. After being mercilessly scolded by in front of so many people, Ryudo also felt embarrassed. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole and hide in it on the spot. At the same time, Huanen, who was already unhappy with Ryudo, was laughing from ear to ear. She also laughed loudly and said, ignorant thing. A toad lusting after a swan's meat. How could Lord Youngji fancy such a lowly smelly person like you? Before she finished her words, a white and pink figure appeared in front of him like a phantom. Ancient Bajiquan, ultimate mystery, Iron Fist unparalleled strike. Suddenly, Ryudo's front foot had already landed. At the same time, the surrounding ground suddenly seemed to have a violent tremor. The dust turned into a dust wall, and very evenly floated up about half a meter. 8 extremities meant that one's force could reach extremely far in all directions. For dragon fighting, who had purchased this ancient killing technique to 100% proficiency, extremely far in all directions wasn't just an adjective. It was a true fact that one could achieve such a feat suddenly. He saw his foot land, and the power from the ground with the foot as the leg as the waist, the belt as the shoulder as the elbow, and finally the elbow as the fist, as if the muscles and joints of the whole body were twisted into a rope, and a burst of explosive sound was released. Pa! Explosive sound, it was a real explosive sound. When Ryudo's fist was blasted in the direction of Hwanin, at the same time, his arm seemed to have disappeared in the air, and the ears of the surrounding people clearly heard a burst of ear-piercing explosive sound. That was the explosive sound of a whip, and it was as if the air was being hit by a violent movement. The explosive sound came out of the body, and the strength of every inch of Ryudo's muscles also coordinated with the power of the stomp and the Dan force, released from his dantian to spread out. This incomparably huge force further shook the joints when it passed through each joint, causing the rotation of the force to accelerate, and further increasing the power of the final explosion. This attack was the strongest attack in the ancient Bajikwan that Ryudo mastered, and it was also the strongest fist in the world. 100% proficiency of the technique, coupled with the physical ability of LV5 physique, extreme Superman, and 100% opening of the chi. When this punch that was close to the Xuanhuan realm landed on Hwanin's body, he almost couldn't feel anything, and he would never be able to feel anything in the future. Bang! Following the second explosion, the head of the Heavenly Eye Group, Intelligence Department, who was standing there perfectly fine, suddenly turned into a cloud of blood mist. Yes, he wasn't sent flying by a punch, nor was he killed or even penetrated by a punch, but he was turned into a cloud of blood mist by a punch. Because the power of this punch was so terrifying that Hwanin's body was almost completely shattered. His flesh, bones, and organs were all smashed into a cloud of blood mist, and along with the fierce wind of the punch, it splashed onto the group of black feather ninjas behind him. After the punch, Hwanin's body completely disappeared, and the group of black feather ninjas who were standing behind him, who were originally dressed in black, were also stained with large patches of blood, as if someone had painted a picture with blood. This scene was so shocking that it even made people wonder if Ryudo was holding a grenade in his hand. That clearly wasn't the case. He had only thrown out a single punch. He had used his full strength in a fit of rage. That was all. Seeing the surrounding air suddenly became dead silent, Ryudo slowly raised his head, looked around, and asked lightly, "Besides that idiot just now, who else wants to laugh? Stand up for me." Before his voice fell, a strong murderous aura blew around like frost. Even the mercenary guards who climbed up from the pile of corpses, or the ninjas who have been killing people since childhood, couldn't help but feel cold all over. It's too terrifying. This murderous aura. Is it really something that a human can emit? When the sky emits murderous aura, the stars move. When the earth emits murderous aura, dragons and snakes rise. When people emit murderous aura, heaven and earth turn upside down. At this time, the murderous aura released by Ryudo even made a big shot like Lin Hua couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Not to mention the group of minions. Not to mention the group of elites. This guy was angry out of humiliation. Looking at the cold expression on Ryudo's face, listening to his tone containing strong murderous aura, Lin Hua understood the man's mood at this time. In fact, at the beginning, when Ryudo was mocked by Sama, his mood was very awkward, and he couldn't wait to dig a hole and bury himself. But at this moment of awkwardness, that idiot from Hwanin ridiculed him in front of so many people. This caused Long Do's awkwardness to turn into anger. In Ryudo's view, laughed at him. After all, it was his own joke, and being laughed at by a woman, he could only let it go. But Hwanin, that stinking trash, dared to laugh at him? Who the F***ck do you think you are? Laughed. You also laughed. Do you have the qualification to laugh at me? Who do you think you are, don't you know? So after Hwanin laughed, Ryudo immediately became angry. He rushed directly, and did not hesitate to use the ultimate mystery of this ancient Bajikwan. With one punch, the idiot who had no eyesight was turned into a bloody foam. That punch just now also represented the highest level of Ryudo's full strength. It was almost the level of killing gods and Buddhas. Except for a real alien descending to the world to fight with him, no one could block this extremely exaggerated punch that could turn people into bloody foam. Such an exaggerated punch naturally gave Yongji a fright. She didn't expect that a mere human's body of flesh and blood could actually explode with such exaggerated power. In the next second, I am decisively ordered. Everyone take the hell butterfly. Kill him. So just now, Ryudo's punch that turned Hwanin into a bloody foam was very shocking. But the mercenaries and ninjas around were still not afraid. They hurriedly took out a black, modified version of the hell butterfly, an aesthetic from their sleeves, and stuffed it into their mouths. Immediately, a bloody aura erupted from their bodies, and they turned into countless enormous Frankenstein monsters that charged at Long Do. This group of Frankenstein monsters was not simple. The hell butterfly, that was later improved by Yomi, could retain the user's intelligence to the greatest extent, and it would not become a rampaging beast. In other words, the marksmanship of this group of mercenaries and the skills of the Black Feather Ninja could continue to play a role after the mutation, but it was purely to enhance the physical ability. What a terrifying army this was. But even so, Ryudo was not afraid in the face of this terrifying army of science and technology. Instead, he held his head high and fought with them. For a time, the surroundings of the pavilion seemed to have become a battlefield. All kinds of gunshots, shouts, fighting sounds, and wind sounds overlapped with each other. It was chaotic to the extreme. Chapter 353. Detected that the host is on the verge of death. About to activate the emergency rescue plan. By spending 1 million to erase the fact of death. Beep 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 beep, erase successful. After an unknown amount of time had passed, Long Do finally woke up with a familiar sound from the system. In the fifth rebirth, what appeared in front of him was still the beautiful manor. However, not long ago, this seemingly peaceful manor was dyed red by blood and severed limbs. Good heavens! I've only killed about 60 of them, and I can't do it anymore. Those monsters are too strong. When he thought of the most powerful battle he had ever encountered in his life, Ryudo couldn't help but feel a little numb. Too strong. This group of elites under IM is really too strong. The Black Feather Ninja from the Heavenly Eye Group Intelligence Department was originally a group of top assassins on the same level as the Guardian Ninja, and they had mastered many inside skills, with amazing lethality. Although the leader Hwanin was dead, the dozens of Black Feather Ninjas around were also the elites of this group, and they also had a lot of ninja tools on them, which was very difficult to deal with. The other group of mercenary guards from the Heavenly Eye Group weren't easy to deal with either. Not only were they proficient in using all kinds of firearms, but they were also shockingly strong in close-range combat. Of course, if these two groups of people were in a normal state, they would definitely not be enough for Ryudo to kill. But the problem was that they had the improved version of Hell Butterfly in their hands, which was really too deadly. Perhaps because Ryudo's transmigration caused a huge change in the world line. The Heavenly Eye Group Pharmacy Department in the original Red Album 2. No survivors didn't develop such a terrifying drug. After taking this thing, the physical ability of the group of Black Feather Ninjas and mercenary guards almost reached the exaggerated LV4. International Warrior, or even LV5. Extreme Superman. And this kind of superhuman drug not only greatly enhanced physique and courage after taking it, but the most terrifying thing was that it didn't decrease intelligence, and it could use the user's ability incisively and vividly. Therefore, when they collectively took this drug, the scene became very terrifying. Hundreds of people with physical abilities comparable to monsters either took out guns, cannons, poisonous knives, bombs, or some other strange things, and rushed toward Ryudo like mad dogs. They were not afraid of death, bullets, and grenades. Even killing them with Ancient Eight Extremities Fist and Bone-Twisting Dragon Hand was not an easy task. To think that there were over 100 of such terrifying monsters. How could this make any sense? Of course, if the word monster was mentioned, then in the eyes of the other party, Ryu was the real monster. Yongji, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded when she saw him charge into the battlefield, as if there was no one around him. If those mercenaries and ninjas, they were monsters of 100 monsters of a monster, of a monster of 1,000 of a monster, of course, Ryudo be a general of 1,000. Even the surging crowd could not stop the man in the pink and white suit from stirring up trouble inside. His figure was as fast as lightning, and every punch and kick was powerful enough to break bones and tear muscles. As he fought, he took out all kinds of strange guns, and like a god of guns, he madly fired at the monsters. Even the fiercest mercenaries could not stop him, and even the most elite ninjas could not kill him. Seeing her subordinates who took the improved version of Hell Butterfly fall to the ground, Ayam was numb. What is this thing? Is he really a human? When Ryudo killed 20 to 30 mercenaries and ninjas in a short 10 minutes, and flew between the countless bullets, shurikens and bombs, Ayam could not imagine that this was a living human. Even so, Long Do wasn't able to kill all of the monsters. He was still a human being after all. As the battle progressed, Long Dowdu, who was running at full speed every second, gradually lost his stamina, causing his movements to become slower and slower. It also became more and more difficult for him to pass through the crowd. In the end, Ryudo was finally hugged by several black feather ninjas, and they detonated the sticky bombs on him. Everyone flew into the sky together. The scene changed, and Ryudo returned to the gate of the manor, and everything was back to the beginning again. It had to be said that the great battle just now was very helpful for Ryudo to understand the limits of his strength. His attributes have almost been raised to the maximum, reaching the limit of human individual combat power. But even if he reached the limit of human individual combat power, he was still a human, a living body of flesh and blood. As long as he was a human with flesh and blood, there would be times when he was tired and exhausted. If he was surrounded by a large number of elite soldiers, there was still a possibility that he would die under various methods due to lack of physical strength. 60 to 70 of the most elite soldiers of the Heavenly Eye group, together with the improved Hell Butterfly and countless firearms and other hot weapons, was enough to kill him in an open space. After all, this was the limit of a human, and the only way to break through the limit was to not be a human. But unfortunately, Ryudo did not have a way to not be a human so far. After sending Lon off again, and stuffing some clothes into his car's tailpipe to ensure that he could not drive too fast, and sending a text message to the command center, Ryudo once again walked into the manor. This time, he did not change his clothes, nor did he do anything fancy, because the lesson from last time was enough. Obviously, Ayam's taste was completely different from a normal woman's. The fashionable outfit that made Lin Hua want to sit on the ground and spit out water, in Ayam's eyes, was not manly at all, and it was even disgusting. What else could Ryudo say? He could only admit that he did not understand a woman's heart, and made a fool of himself. So this time, just like the first time, he walked over to Yongji without any regard for his own family. Ryudo-kun, you're here. At this time, Ayam, who was holding a book and killing time in the pavilion, also noticed the presence of the visitor, so she raised her head and showed a gentle smile, stood up and walked down the pavilion to take the initiative to invite him in. When the two of them sat together and looked at each other, Ryudo smiled and praised. Really, it's better to meet you in person than to hear about you. You're much more beautiful than I thought. No woman would refuse a man's praise, especially a man that she liked. So Ayam's lips curled up slightly, and she said with a smile, "You really know how to talk. But I like to hear that. Hee, you look even better when you smile. I like to see your smiling face." Really? Then you have to find a way to make me smile. That's not a problem. But simply making you smile is not interesting enough. I have an interesting way to play. Oh. Ayam raised her eyebrows and asked in confusion, "Can this be used to play?" At this time, Ayam and Ryudo had a table full of delicious food in front of them, and naturally, there were several bottles of good wine next to them. Ryudo picked up a bottle of vodka with more than 60 degrees of alcohol, opened it, and poured a glass for Ayam and himself. He said with a smile, "The way to play is like this. If I can make you laugh in 5 seconds, then you drink a glass of wine. Otherwise, I will drink a glass." Because this time Ryudo intended to get closer to Ayam, He used his specialty, drinking, to get close to her. Speaking of drinks, Ryudo had played a very good role in his past career of picking up girls. As early as more than a year ago, Ryudo relied on taking Yunyen to drink in a tavern to get the first girlfriend in his life. Not long ago, Ryudo also relied on this thing to get Dunya and Colored Glaze drunk, making the two harem, who always couldn't stand each other, a lot better in terms of relationship. So now what Ryudo had to do was to get Ayam drunk. It was best to get her completely drunk. Then, he could directly put her in the car and take her out of the manor. After hearing Ryudo's play, Ayam also clapped her hands and smiled. Okay, as long as you can make me laugh, 1 or 2 glasses of wine are nothing. That's right, to Yongji. What does 1 or 2 cups of wine count for? However, Ryudo didn't say that letting her drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine would be enough. With Ryudo's current fast enough reaction, high IQ, and so many jokes and performance methods that he read online in his previous life, it was really easy to make Ayam drink. In this way, accompanied by Ryudo's various internet jokes and exaggerated performances, there were bursts of laughter in the pavilion, and at the same time, there were waves of drinking sounds. Just like that, the two of them ate, drank, chatted, and fooled around. Unknowingly, an hour had passed just like that. And Yongji was already a little dizzy from drinking. It should be about time, right? Looking at the stunning woman in front of him, who drank until her cheeks were red and her eyes were blurred, Ryudo nodded slightly. He quickly came to Ayam, who was about to fall on the table, and helped her up. He said in her ear, "Let's go, I will take you." But before Ryudo finished his words, Ayam suddenly stretched out her soft and slender arms and hooked his neck. In a split second, the pair of intoxicated eyes looked directly at Ryudo's eyes. The bottom cherry lips with the smell of wine slowly opened, and said in a sweet voice, "Ryudo-kun, I think I'm drunk, help me back to the room. Let's go to bed to rest and chat, how about it?" Slurp. Speaking until here, Ayam couldn't help but stretch out her pink tongue and lick her lips. Obviously, her so-called rest was definitely not the kind of rest that normal people would have, and chat was definitely not the kind of chat that normal people would have. When his eyes looked at the blurred eyes, his nose smelled the tempting sweet fragrance, and he could vaguely feel the soft body in front of him. At that moment, Ryudo really couldn't take it anymore. Well, other than castrated men and some men with special fetishes, normal men shouldn't be able to take it. Chapter 354. What should I do? When the drunk Ayam requested to go to the room to rest, Ryudo really felt his whole body go numb. If it was from the standpoint of a man, of course, he wouldn't say no. After all, he was holding a peerless beauty in his arms. But from the perspective of the great male lead, as a real man with 3 harems, and as a hero who was preparing to save the world, doing so would be too unkind. After all, Ayam was the final boss, the villain. As the male protagonist, how could he have this kind of relationship with the final boss? Wouldn't that make him look like a pervert? No, he must reject her. He must reject her righteously. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you are beautiful and charming. So, facing Ayam's temptation, Ryudo took a deep breath and shook his head. Then he said righteously, "Miss Ayam, how do you get to your room?" After hearing Ryudo's obedient reply, Ayam happily kissed him on the face, put her hands around his neck and smiled. Over there, hurry up, I can't wait." Just like that, Longdo hugged the villain in his arms like a princess and walked towards the house not far away. Duh! As the sound of a mallet being struck rang out, the image of a trial instantly appeared in Longdo's mind. In the dim mental space, a golden retriever holding a mallet and wearing a judge's long hair was sitting on the highest seat. It looked calm as if it was about to fall asleep. Chua! When the lights on the left and right suddenly flashed, Ryudo Kiryu, who was standing in the lawyer's seat, pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and showed a cunning expression. On the other side, Ryudo Kiryu, who was standing in the prosecutor's seat, held a whip in his hand and looked at Ryudo in the defendant's seat like he was looking at garbage. What's going on? Didn't I just accept Ayam's temptation? and want to go back to the room with her? Why did this trial suddenly appear in my mind? Just as Ryudo himself was standing in the defendant's seat, the golden retriever wearing the judge's long hair knocked the mallet again. It said in a tone that seemed to come from the clouds. Next, the defendant Ryudo Kiryu couldn't resist the witch's temptation and tried to commit a crime of misconduct. What? Crime of misconduct? This. Defendant, please shut up, or you will be sentenced to death. Pa. After knocking the mallet again, the golden retriever said to the prosecutor. First, the prosecution. Because this isn't the formal court procedure, both sides, as long as the meaning is. Suddenly the prosecutor Ryudo. The prosecutor. And. BB. Die. Prosecutor Long Do snorted coldly. You're the kind of person who can't move when you see a beautiful woman. You're the kind of person who enters a room when she asks you to. You're the kind of person whose morals follow your facial features. You're a pervert who cheats on others. You don't have to say that, do you? After being scolded, Ryudo's head drooped. But at this time, the lawyer Ryudo pushed up his glasses and said in a gloomy tone, Prosecutor, you're wrong. The defendant hasn't committed adultery yet, right? But he's about to carry her into the room. If that's not committing adultery, then what is? Indeed, it's undeniable that the defendant wants to have a relationship beyond friendship with the beauty, but it's not considered adultery, because he can commit suicide after doing it and start everything over. What? When the lawyer, Ryudo, brought up such an important piece of evidence, the prosecutor, Ryudo, couldn't help but widen his eyes. The lawyer, Ryudo, continued. As long as the timeline goes back to when they first entered the manor, then no matter what the defendant did before going back, it won't count. There's no doubt about this, right? This, the law seems to be. But in terms of morality, seeing the prosecutor, Ryudo, break out in cold sweat, the lawyer, Ryudo, smiled and said, whether it's legally or morally, committing adultery after going back in time isn't considered adultery. So even if the defendant went back in time 100 times and had sex with the beauty 100 times, as long as he went back in time at the last time, it won't count as adultery. When he said the last sentence, Lawyer Long Do suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at Prosecutor Long Do in the prosecutor's seat with an unyielding attitude. He revealed an expression of victory. Woo 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 woo. As for Prosecutor Ryudo, it was as if he had been struck by the ultimate profound, unparalleled iron fist. His entire body vanished into the darkness. Pa. As the head inquisitor's voice faded away, the court in Ryudo's mind also ended. The head inquisitor also gave him a very shameless method. Right? As long as I keep going back, wouldn't I be able to do anything? No matter what, it wasn't considered cheating? When Ryudo carried Iam's bouncy, fragrant, and soft body into the inner room, he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. His heart began to stir. As a man, Long Do was not interested in Yongji's body. Of course, he was interested. After all, she was the true #1 beauty in the world. In addition to her extremely special identity, the feeling of carrying such a woman to bed would definitely be irresistible. However, Ryudo couldn't do that. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he couldn't do that. In public, he was the leader of the Black Hand Alliance and the enemy of the Heavenly Eye Group. Both sides were at opposite ends of the scale. It was impossible for them to coexist. They had to fight until one side disappeared. In private, he was the future husband of 3 women. Moreover, Yunyan was pregnant with Ryudo's child. It would be too despicable of him to have an affair at this time. So this time, even if Long Do was willing to sell a little bit of his body to seduce Yongji, he had never thought of making it real with her. He wanted to have a good time with her, and have a good time with her. However, when he remembered that he still had the ability to go back, Ryudo seemed to see a brand new path of scum slowly opening up in front of him. That's right. If I didn't pay, it wouldn't be considered prostitution. How could going back in time be considered cheating? If going back in time after having sex is considered cheating, then after dying so many times, wouldn't I be a dead man? Moreover, Iam had harmed me greatly before. If I coughed at her a few times, it would be considered as collecting some interest. It doesn't seem to be too much of a thing, right? In the end, as long as I commit suicide and go back in time, I can just turn around and leave the manor. No one will suffer any losses. And that makes sense. After using such a seemingly reasonable but actually messy fallacy to convince himself, Ryudo swallowed a mouthful of saliva and happily pushed open the door of the suite. When the door was pushed open, there was a big red love bed inside. There were 2 pillows with the word yes on the bed. There were also mini roses scattered on the carpet. It looked very familiar. It was as if the lovers' hotel had been moved over. Walking into the room, Ryudo excitedly placed Ayam on the bed. Looking at her plump buttocks that vibrated when they collided with the bed, he couldn't help but stare. However, Ayam stretched out her hand and touched his forehead. She smiled and said, "Go take a shower first before going to bed. I don't like the smell of sweat on my body." Since Ayam said so, Ryudo could only climb off the bed and walk towards the bathroom. He thought in his heart that this girl was quite fond of cleanliness. In a while, he would let her know why the flowers were so red. Not long after, Ryudo took off his clothes and went under the shower head. He turned on the water valve and let the warm water flow on his muscular body. Do-la 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 do-la. Thinking that he could take revenge on Ayam, this stinky woman. In a while, Ryudo couldn't help but hum excitedly. This was definitely not because of lust, absolutely not. Do. But just as Ryudo was about to finish his shower and go out to find Ayam to take revenge, the phone he placed on the sink suddenly vibrated faintly. Someone is looking for me? Is it Colored Glaze and the others? But they wouldn't call me on this phone, right? Before Ryudo came to this manor, he deliberately let Colored Glaze and the others not use the phone because he was afraid that the phone would be eavesdropped or intercepted. Instead, he used the small communication device in his clothes to communicate. So logically, no one should send a message to Ryudo's phone at this time. However, when Longdo quickly wiped his hands dry and picked up his phone, his eyes suddenly popped out of their sockets. It was as if a pupil earthquake had occurred, because on the phone's text message, it actually indicated that 1 billion yuan was transferred to Ryudo's bank account. And the account that transferred the money was actually Tianmu Group. What's more, the transfer instructions even had the words overnight fee written on them. What is going on? Yongji, that fellow, suddenly gave me 1 billion overnight fee? Is she planning to keep me? Wait. I received money. I have money in my account. Doesn't that mean? The moment he reacted, Ryudo couldn't help but tremble violently. From a long time ago experiment, he had already determined that there were 2 backtracking time points for his rubbish pay-to-win system. One was before the incident began, and the other was after the money was transferred. In other words, if Ryudo received money in a certain incident, then his backtracking time point would be fixed at the moment when the money was transferred. The reason for this change in time point might be to prevent Ryudo from using some kind of bug, such as committing suicide, after receiving a sum of money to earn money. But because Ryudo didn't use the bug to earn money, he didn't care much about this. At most, he wouldn't take money from others during the incident. But he calculated that he wouldn't take money from others. But he didn't calculate that others might take the initiative to transfer money to him. So the real trouble now was that Ryudo received the money in the bathroom in Ayam's room. In other words, his backtracking location was fixed here. Even if he committed suicide now, it had to start from this moment in the bathroom. Chapter 355. *T. I'm in trouble. No, it's not trouble, it's over. Until now, Ryudo had transmigrated to this world for more than a year. In the past year or so, Longdo had encountered countless troubles, experienced countless difficulties, and crossed who knows how many dangers and mountains of blades and seas of fire. Even so, Ryudo would not die. In other words, after he died, he could rely on his shameless time reversal to resurrect to the moment before the incident began. This resurrection ability reduced Ryudo's risk of dying to the lowest, to the point where it was almost non-existent. After all, as long as he had money, he could resurrect. Before he ran out of money, he could always find a way to survive. Especially later, Ryudo built a huge extreme Tao alliance through his own hard work, and was able to obtain an astronomical amount of money from it. His chances of dying became even lower. 2. 679,600,000. That was Ryudo's total assets before this. If he added the 1 billion that I.M. gave him, it would be as much as 3.6 billion. What kind of concept was that? According to the calculation of 1 million per life, this 3.6 billion could kill him more than 3,000 times. What kind of incident could not be resolved even if he died more than 3,000 times? Was such an incident really possible? Ryudo would definitely find it hard to believe that there was something that could cause him to die thousands of times. However, when he was really stuck in this bathroom, he knew how to spell the word death. The scene was in the manor under the Heavenly Eye group, in the bathroom of I.M.'s room. Long Do was bathing naked inside, while Yongji was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. She was ready to eat him up at any time. What should I do? What should I do? In a situation where he could not go back in time, Ryudo would definitely not do that with I.M. Otherwise, not only would he be letting down the three at home, but he would also be unable to control his crotch in the future. I've decided. I'll run first. Thinking of this, Ryudo could only take a deep breath. Although this was I.M.'s room, if Ryudo wanted to run, I.M. alone would not be able to stop him. In that case, he might as well not care about anything else and run out first. Creak. However, just as Ryudo was about to put on his clothes and run, the bathroom door was slowly pushed open from the outside. A pair of eyes with a strange aura looked in from outside the door. Fortunately, it was broad daylight. Otherwise, the scene of I.M. secretly opening the bathroom door and looking in would not feel strange, even if it was thrown into a horror movie. When Ryudo entered the bathroom, she had clearly locked the door from the inside. She picked up a bunch of keys, casually picked open the door without Ryudo's permission. Ryukuen, you're not done. Hurry up and come out. I.M., who peeked half of her face out from the door, completely ignored Ryudo's shocked face and asked with a charming tone. From I.M.'s current gaze, the way she looked at Ryudo was not like looking at a lover, but more like looking at a toy that was about to fall into her hands. This kind of woman was even a bit scary, compared to the gentle and elegant woman in the pavilion, who seemed to like Ryudo very much. It was as if they were two different people. However, this was also one of I.M.'s characteristics. This woman's temperament was even more unpredictable than the clouds in the sky. Normal people would have a hard time figuring out what she was thinking. This woman's gaze is not right. Why do I feel like there's a conspiracy? After noticing that I.M.'s attitude was completely different from when she was drinking and chatting in the pavilion, Ryudo couldn't help but frown slightly. If I.M. still wanted to pretend to be a cute girlfriend in front of him before, then now she directly laid all her cards on the table. That's right. I'm laying all my cards on the table. I'm not pretending anymore. I'm going to kill you. That's the feeling. When he noticed the change in I.M., Ryudo also quickly wrapped a towel around his important parts and smiled bitterly. 1 minute. Just wait for me for 1 more minute. But even with such a relaxed request, I.M. still smiled and said, 1 minute. It's too long now. When the word no came out of her mouth, you knew that there was no turning back. In this state, I.M. wouldn't listen to anyone. So before Ryudo could react, she had already pushed open the bathroom door and strode in. Until now, Ryudo noticed that I.M. had actually quietly changed into a set of cool translucent black silk spaghetti strap nightgown outside. The seductive spaghetti strap hooked on her round shoulders. The nightgown barely covered the fullness in front of her chest, exposing the curvy delicate collarbone to the air. Through the translucent black nightgown, Ryudo could vaguely see the indistinct dark black lace underwear under the nightgown, coupled with the knee-length skirt that revealed a crystal-clear jade leg and snow-white bare foot. It was really full of the rich charm of a mature woman. How shocking was the power of this outfit! It was really enough to shatter Ryudo's uncertain conviction on the spot. The premise was that I.M. didn't reveal her true face because of impatience. That's right. If I.M. wasn't so happy that she forgot to maintain the other appearance that she had been maintaining since she saw Ryudo, she might have succeeded. But after seeing Ayam's eyes that looked like she wanted to eat him, and her attitude of not seeing him as a human, but as a toy, Ryudo came back to his senses. I was too naive before. No matter how beautiful this woman is, no matter how much she likes me, she's still a vicious monster. She can't be thought of as a normal person. Actually, in Ryudo's subconscious, he had always had an overly romantic fantasy. He always felt that the woman who was willing to wear a pink dress and show a gentle expression for him could always maintain this pretty side and even become a normal person because of love. But in reality, Ayam was just wearing a mask to tease him. Even the drunken and intoxicated look from before had long disappeared from her face. It was obvious that the drunken scene was just an act that Ayam put on to eat him. Ayam liked Ryudo, this was an objective fact. But her like was based on a strong sense of possessiveness, and there wasn't any tenderness or love in it. It was like she liked a new toy. She wanted to have this toy. She wanted to play with this toy. But she didn't care about this toy at all. If one day she played with this toy until it broke, then she would just throw it away casually. She felt like an oversized naughty child. Thus, when he saw this oversized naughty child walking towards him and touching his face with her jade-like hands, Ryudo instinctively reached out and grabbed her slender but strong wrist. For a moment, a fragrance that was different from the previous sweet poppy scent floated into Ryudo's nose, causing his stomach to have a strange churning feeling. Did this woman Ayam spray some strange perfume? Perhaps so. But now Ryudo didn't have the mood to think about this. Instead, he said seriously, "I've been here for a long time. Seems like it's time to leave." This sentence, in this situation, undoubtedly represented a rejection, and it was a very straightforward rejection. When he made this serious rejection, Ryudo was already prepared for Ayam to go crazy on the spot, or even take out a gun to shoot at him. But she didn't. After hearing this sentence, Ayam just slightly raised her eyebrows, and a strange smile appeared on her face. She slowly took a few steps back and watched Ryudo put on his clothes as fast as possible. She didn't do anything. After being rejected, Ayam actually didn't do anything. She just chose to step back and let Ryudo change his clothes. Something's wrong. This woman is up to something again. From Ryudo's understanding of Ayam, she wouldn't just let him go like this. She wouldn't let a caged bird fly away. But what does Ayam want to do? Ryudo knew that there were countless mercenary guards and black feather ninja guarding the room. Even the two ministers, Hwanin and Lin Hannah, were there. Did she already inform them to prepare to surround him? Or, just as Long Do thought of this and was about to step out of the bathroom, he suddenly felt his vision blur. His head felt dizzy and he fell to the ground. Plop, a soft sound came. His handsome face had an intimate contact with the ceramic tiles on the bathroom floor. This is poison? I'm poisoned. Although falling to the ground didn't hurt Ryudo, who was almost invulnerable, the strong dizziness and numbness made him feel bad. Invulnerable didn't mean invulnerable to poison. Using poison to break through a steel fortress was a very common strategy. In fact, although Ryudo had always been thinking of ways to trick Ayam out of the manor, Ayam had also been thinking of ways to trick Ryudo. And her methods of scheming against Ryudo were very difficult to guard against. If Ayam didn't take the initiative to explain, Ryudo would have a hard time even finding out. When Ryudo fell to the ground, Ayam came over and gracefully knelt on the ground. She put the toy's head on her smooth thighs, forming a very ambiguous knee pillow position. However, using poison to poison the other party, and then forcing him to use his knee as a pillow was much more vicious than the knee pillow that Rui Hui had made for Long Do. Suddenly, she couldn't help but laugh. How is it? The medicine department's special anesthetic that can even paralyze an elephant is not bad, right? This anesthetic, when did it? Long Do's body was limp and weak at the moment, to the point that he was stuttering when he spoke. The water you use to take a bath. Ayam also explained generously. It has been mixed with a high concentration of anesthetic that will be absorbed through the skin and mucous membranes. Then what if I didn't take a bath? Half of the new perfume I sprayed on is also mixed with anesthetic. Combined with the colorless and odorless other half of the air in the bathroom, You will also have the same result after smelling it. My body already has this kind of anesthetic resistance, so I won't fall for it. Amazing. Of course, if not, how can I get you? I'm going to start. Saying this, Ayam revealed a satisfied smile, then reached out and turned Ryudo's head, and kissed his lips as if tasting wine. Chapter 356. Logically speaking, chirping was something people did to express their love. Everyone's understanding of chirping was different. Up until now, Ryudo thought that he had chirped with 5 women before. Actually, it was hard to say if that was the case. In any case, he thought that it was 5. Apart from his own harem of 3, there was also Ling Hua, who took advantage of the situation that night, and Ayam, who had been struggling for her life not long ago. Naturally, the feeling of chirping with each of the women was greatly different. Colored Glaze's kiss was like tasting a pot of clear but fragrant tea. The more he tasted it, the more fragrant it was, and the purer it was. Union's kiss was like chasing sweet clouds among the soft clouds. Sweet honey even flowed in the clouds. Junia's kiss was like the beauty of the Northland's ice and snow. It was also mixed with the fragrance of vodka and sour cream. Ling Hua's chirp, that night when he took advantage of the situation. Let's not talk about it. In any case, it was the kind that he didn't want to think about. As for Ayam, when she was killed by Ryudo for the first time not long ago, her last bloody kiss was filled with the taste of rust. It was difficult to describe how romantic it was. But this time, Ayam placed Ryudo on her knees. The chirp that came down from above was filled with a strong desire to plunder. In that instant, Ryudo, who was numb all over and unable to move, subconsciously wanted to turn his head. However, he was firmly locked onto the beauty's knees by a pair of seemingly slender, but extremely strong hands. He could only watch as the pair of eyes that seemed to be looking at a toy got closer and closer to him. They were so close that they were almost touching his eyes. I'm going to start. This was what Ayam said before she moved her lips. Actually, this sentence was very suitable for the current situation. This wasn't a chirp that was used between lovers. Instead, it was a one-sided plunder between the plunderer and the plunderer. Ryudo had never thought that there would be a chirp in the world that was not sweet at all. It even made him feel cold all over. Moreover, this chirp came from the most beautiful woman in the world. At this moment, Ayam was undoubtedly enjoying herself. She held the head that had fallen limp on her lap. Her eyes were filled with a sense of victory, as if she was a high and mighty queen. At that moment, Ryudo felt like he was no longer human. It was as if he had turned into a lollipop that had just had its wrapper removed, and was being enjoyed wantonly. Logically speaking, there should be no one who wouldn't be happy to be able to kiss with a great beauty like Ayam. But this scene, which was supposed to be very good, was not enjoyable for Long Fight at all. He only felt very humiliated. This feeling of being robbed and suppressed was a great humiliation that he had never experienced before. Ayam. F asterisk CKU hashtag yen% hashtag asterisk Sajuawayaku. Long Do could only mutter some indistinct ancient god language in an attempt to express his anger and dissatisfaction when he was under the effects of the strong compound anesthetic and couldn't even make a sound accurately. However, Ayam did not plan to pay attention to his anger. Instead, she slowly tasted Ryudo bit by bit, as if she was tasting a cup of old wine. Whoa. Then she grinned and said in an excited tone, "So that's how it feels. Is this the feeling?" For Ayam, it was her first time doing this. However, it was as if she was born to be good at it. She immediately found a way to make herself extremely excited. Not bad, I'm a bit addicted. Feeling the remaining scent on her body, Ayam's eyes flashed with a hint of madness. Haha. In the next moment, she picked up Ryudo like holding a child and walked towards the pink bed outside the bathroom. At this time, even if you think with your butt, you know that Ayam will not be satisfied after tasting the marrow. She will only want to rob Ryudo this toy until he is squeezed into ashes. Of course, this was completely normal in Ayam's eyes, because she paid. The 1 billion yen that was suddenly transferred to Ryudo's account was the maintenance fee that Ayam gave him. Since this money has been accepted, then Ryudo is Iam's toy from that moment on. As the master, she can play with him however she wants. She does not need to ask for the consent of the toy at all. What should I do? Bastard, this anesthetic is really strong. I can't even move a finger. At this time, Ryudo naturally knew what this woman wanted to do to him. In fact, he had been struggling in the dark, but it was useless. The anesthetic mixture concocted by the pharmaceutical department of the Heavenly Eye Group was shockingly strong. Even Longdo's body, which was close to superhuman, had no resistance to it. After throwing Ryudo on the bed, Iam touched his face and smiled. The effect of this anesthetic mixture can last for at least 12 hours. Before that, I will definitely not let you go. Good luck. With that, she began to slowly climb onto the bed, and her tone became strange. No, let's use the last move. Seeing that Iam was about to continue going crazy, Ryudo could not help but take a deep breath and concentrate all the remaining strength in his body in the dantian. For a monster like Ryudo who had reached 100% chi opening, his control of chi force was naturally incomparable to ordinary martial artists. Obvious force, hidden force, Dan force. These were the three major levels in chi refining. When reaching Dan force, the body seemed to have an internal force that could move freely. It was very similar to the internal force in wuxia novels. However, what this internal force could do was not so exaggerated. It was impossible to create 18 dragons with one palm, or release invisible sword energy. It could only move within the body. For example, if someone punched Ryudo's chest, Ryudo could instantly mobilize Dan force. He could create a force in his body that blasted outwards without moving his body and shatter that person's fist. However, because his body was paralyzed by the anesthetic mixture, his Dan force was also extremely weak, so he did not have the strength to deal with Iam. However, just because he could not use Dan force to kill Iam, did not mean that Ryudo could not use Dan force to kill himself. Therefore, just as Iam was preparing for the final moment, Ryudo's body suddenly trembled, and he spat out a thick stream of blood from his mouth. At that moment, Ryudo gathered all the Dan force in his body, and directly blasted the healthy and lively heart from the inside. For a moment, his heart was almost torn open on the spot. He spat out blood from his mouth, and looked like he would not survive. This is Yongji, who sensed that something was wrong with Longdo, quickly pressed her ear against his chest, only to hear that the heartbeat inside was rapidly disappearing. He broke his own heart? How did he do it? It was not that Iam did not expect Ryudo to commit suicide, but she did not expect that he could commit suicide on the spot without even moving his hands. Wasn't this too magical? Haha. Stinking woman. You wish. At the last second before his consciousness disappeared, Ryudo persisted and raised his hand. He gave Iam, who was sitting on him, the middle finger, and then his consciousness disappeared into the chaotic darkness. Detected that the host is on the verge of death. Initiating emergency rescue plan. Using 1 million yuan to erase the fact of death. Beep 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 beep, erase successful. In the next moment, Ryudo woke up in the familiar bathroom not far away. The bathroom was still the same bathroom, and he was holding a phone in his hand. The phone showed that a 1 billion yuan transfer had just been transferred to his account. Sure enough, Ryudo was right. His resurrection point was now fixed in this bathroom. No matter how many times he died now, he had to start from this bathroom when he was resurrected. He could no longer go back to the manor's entrance. But compared to this, what made Ryudo's headache was the shower head that was still dripping water not far away, and the feeling of his body being wet. Mixed anesthetic. The mixed anesthetic developed by Tianmu Group, Medical Department, had been mixed in the bathwater and flowed all over Ryudo's body, and was absorbed by his skin and mucous membranes. Although Ryudo had turned back time, the fact that he was mixed with anesthetic would not change. In other words, he had to start thinking about the game with Iam from the state of being poisoned. Mixed anesthetic. If he had this kind of poison, there was no way he could fight with Iam, so he had to detoxify. If Ryudo remembered correctly, There was indeed a medicine that could detoxify in his Krypton Gold Mall. So he didn't care about wearing clothes, but hurriedly sat by the bathtub and searched for the types of medicine in the mall. But there were too many medicines in the mall. After searching for a while, he still couldn't find the antidote he wanted. Creak. However, just as Ryudo was searching for the antidote, the door of the bathroom slowly opened. The door of the bathroom was slowly pushed open from the outside, and a pair of eyes emitting a strange aura looked in through the crack. She's here, she's here. I am came to find him like a female ghost. Ryudo-kun, are you not done yet? Come out quickly. The peerless beauty outside the door still had that chilling smile, as she said to her toy with a smile. Not good, I haven't found the antidote. What should I do? Seeing I am pushing the door open again and walking in, Ryudo kept retreating, and even unconsciously shrank to the corner of the bathroom. At the same time, he quickly rummaged in the mall. Aya, you seem to be afraid of me all of a sudden? Could it be? Did you find something bad? After seeing Ryudo's completely different expression from before, Ayam, who was wearing a cool black dress, raised her eyebrows slightly, but a strange smile appeared on her face. Chapter 357. Today's bathroom, even the entire room, the entire manor, to put it bluntly, was a giant cage prepared to trap Ryudo. Insidious methods such as putting a high concentration of anesthetic in the water tank were actually everywhere in the manor, including the pavilion where Longdo had stayed when he first came in. There weren't many things that could be eaten, although Ryudo had been very cautious since he came in and didn't eat anything carelessly. But as the saying goes, you can't hide forever. As long as the number of traps was enough, then there would always be one that could catch the prey. Wouldn't that be a success? From the sound of water coming from the bathroom, and the water stains on Ryudo's body that hadn't dried yet, it could be seen. He obviously used the shower head here to take a shower, and the mixture of anesthetic also seeped into the young man's body. Ayam couldn't be more familiar with the effect of the anesthetic. Even an elephant would be paralyzed on the spot. So at this moment, she looked at Ryudo, who was leaning against the wall, as if she was looking at a toy that was about to fall into her hands. Not good. My hand. My body is starting to go numb. Just as Ayam walked over with a smile, Ryudo felt his body go numb. The familiar feeling of powerlessness from before appeared on his body again. 30 seconds. From the time Ryudo backtracked until he felt something strange in his body, about 30 seconds had passed. With this amount of time, it was actually a little difficult to find a specific medicine in the Krypton shopping mall that was as vast as a sea of items. But fortunately, if the first time didn't work, Ryudo could do it a second, third, and fourth time. Bang! So at the moment when Ayam didn't react, he didn't hesitate to slap his heart. Before the anesthetic took effect, his heart was crushed. Ryudo-kun. You actually. When Ryudo fell down, he seemed to see Ayam angrily saying something, but it had nothing to do with him. Detected that the host is on the verge of death, initiating emergency rescue plan, by spending 1 million to erase the fact of death. Beep 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 beep, erase successful. When Ryudo opened his eyes again, he had already appeared at the place where he originally stood. In his hand was the phone that had just finished transferring the money, but after backtracking this time, Ryudo immediately opened the Krypton shopping mall and frantically searched inside. 30 seconds. This was the time limit of Ryudo's backtracking. Every time he exceeded this time, the poison in his body would activate, and he would become weak. Even suicide would require a lot of effort. Therefore, Longdo decided to use this time to commit suicide and backtrack. He also kept looking for things he needed in the Krypton shopping mall. Under these circumstances, the scene in the bathroom became somewhat became comical. Ryudo-kun, are you done showering? Hurry up and come out. SSS Ryudo-kun. You actually. Ryudo-kun, are you done showering? Hurry up and come out. SSS. Ryudo-kun. You actually. Every time Ayam opened the door, she would repeat the same sentence. Then, not long after, Ryudo would slap himself in the chest and look at her running towards him with a shocked expression. because he had repeated this process countless times. Long-do was even a little annoyed looking at Yongji's face. But fortunately, in the end, he still managed to find the rogue detoxification pill that could cure the poison. The price of this pill was not expensive, but it was mixed in with a bunch of messy items. It took a lot of effort to find it. Very good, I got it. Thus, after spending money to buy the detoxification pill, Long-do, who had retraced his steps, swallowed it without hesitation. Then, he changed his clothes as fast as he could and waited for Yongji's Ngu Malhut. Squeak. After a while, accompanied by the sound of the door being pushed open, a pair of eyes that sent chills down his spine appeared in the gap of the door. Ryudo-kun, you still haven't. Without waiting for Ayam to finish the sentence that Ryudo was sick of hearing, Ryudo smiled first and said, I'm done showering, I'll come out now. Before he finished, he did not wait for Ayam, who was lying at the door, to respond. He took the initiative to open the bathroom door and walked out. Oh, this guy is quite honest. Seeing Ryudo, quickly ran to the side of the bed and did not hesitate to sit on the bed. Ayam's mouth could not help but raise a strange smile. However, even though Long-do seemed to be taking the initiative to do it with her, Yongji naturally wouldn't let him do as he wished. She was the one who needed to take the initiative. How could she let a mere man take the initiative? Calculating the time, it was about time. He should be about to fall. Therefore, when she also walked gracefully to the bed, Ayam was secretly calculating the time in her heart. As expected, before she could reach the bedside, Long-do suddenly frowned. Then his entire body went limp, and like a noodle, he softly fell onto the pink bed. He quickly glared at Ayam and said angrily, You poisoned me? Aya, don't make it sound so bad. This is just a means to liven things up. Ayam lightly came to Ryudo's side, sat on the bed, and rubbed his frowning eyebrows. Her tone was also full of ridicule. Because of the mixed anesthetic, Ryudo could only lie on the bed motionlessly. He slowly asked, You plan to? What? Do you plan to? Me? Don't worry, I won't kill you. I will slowly love you and treat you as the most fun toy in the world, until I get tired of playing with you. Speaking until here, Ayam gently leaned her head on Ryudo's chest and reached out to hug his neck, looking like a girl in love. If one were to simply look at this scene, the scene of a handsome man and a beautiful woman leaning against each other was simply as beautiful as a painting. Unfortunately, the great evil hidden behind was enough to completely destroy this painting. Ayam didn't tell Ryudo what would happen when he was tired of playing with her, but the answer was self-evident. One word was enough to describe it, and it was the kind of death that would be very miserable. Of course, Ayam wouldn't think about this for the time being. She was only immersed in the joy of getting a new toy. However, just as this naughty child, who thought she had gotten a new toy, was about to lean her head forward and try out the wonderful feeling of chirp, a pair of strong palms locked her soft and fragrant shoulders like lightning. Kacha! Before Ayam could react, the warm palms forcefully pulled from her shoulders. With an extremely ingenious method, her shoulder joint was dislocated. With the shoulder joint dislocated, Ayam's arm was completely immobile from the shoulder down. At the same time, intense pain quickly rushed to the nerves of this demon king. But it wasn't over yet. Ryudo, who was originally under her body, immediately hugged her crystal-clear legs that were exposed from the knee-length skirt. Accompanied by a series of cracking sounds, he also dislocated Ayam's knee joint. The whole process lasted less than a second. In just such a short period of time, Ayam went from being in an active position to being in a passive position. And in the blink of an eye, she lost all ability to move. Don't stare at me like that. I won't kill you for the time being, don't worry. After sitting up from the bed, Ryudo reached out and patted Ayam's head that was tilted on the bed, and said to her in a teasing tone. And when the joints of her arms and legs were dislocated, and she fell on the bed like a puppet with broken strings, Ayam's eyes were filled with disbelief. No effect. How is that possible? The medicine department's specially mixed anesthetic didn't have any effect on him at all? Although he didn't know what had happened, this unbelievable scene had actually happened. Because this situation was too magical, It was no wonder that even Ayam couldn't figure out what was going on. Who would have thought that Ryudo had repeatedly committed suicide for this moment? She could only ask in confusion, "You already knew that I would poison you? Or do you have special antibodies in your body?" Ryudo heard this and laughed. "That's not the point. The point is that you are now in my hands, and your group of subordinates are still far away. In other words, you are now my toy, understand?" Ryudo's tone was light, and had a strong sense of superiority. As he spoke, he reached out his finger and gently stroked Ayam's cheek with the back of his finger, as if he was stroking a cat at home. This was not a gentle caress between lovers, but a one-sided enjoyment by the dominant over the dominated. Ever since Yongji was born, she had never experienced such a feeling of being controlled by someone, of being manipulated at will. As she felt Ryudo's finger slowly slide down her cheek, to her swan-like slender neck, and continued down, she couldn't help but feel a strong sense of shame and indignation. Shame and indignation, 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 shame and indignation. She was actually being played with like a doll. Anger at Ryudo, this bastard, actually dared to play with her like a doll. The strong sense of shame and indignation made Ayam's face flush red, and she couldn't help but curse. "Ryudo Kiryu, kill me if you dare." Ayam originally wanted to say, "Kill me if you dare." But who knew that before she could finish her sentence, Ryudo grinned and lowered his head to cover her small mouth that was about to protest loudly. This wasn't a gentle chirp between lovers, but a one-sided plunder between the plunderer and the plunderer. It was plunder, the same two people, but unfortunately, their identities and positions were completely reversed. Ayam had never thought that chirp would be so infuriating, so humiliating, that it made people want to kill the other party 100 times on the spot. This feeling of being plundered and enjoyed was the biggest humiliation Ayam had ever suffered. It made her so angry that she wanted to die on the spot. Chapter 358. The Dominator and the Dominated. The Plunderer and the Plundered. These characters, when faced with the same situation, their reactions and attitudes were naturally completely different. Since who knew how long ago, Yongji had been a ruler and a raider, a high and mighty character, just like the empress of the old era. Her temperament was changeable, and her methods were cruel. She never needed to consider the consequences of her actions, and killing people was as easy as crushing an ant. Such a Tenmu Ayam, it could be said that she never thought from the perspective of the dominated and plundered, just like how a wolf would not think from the perspective of a sheep. This world is my hunting ground, and I am the hunter here. All the creatures here were born to be dominated by me, plundered by me, and killed by me. In Ayam's heart, she clearly had this degree of arrogance, the kind of strong arrogance that seemed to be standing in the clouds, looking down on all humans from high above. However, at this moment, the man who was holding her chin and plundering her body, with a smile tore Ayam's arrogance and dignity to pieces. Ryudo. F *CKU #yen% hashtag *sajua. At this moment Ayam, whose limbs could not move and head was firmly held, could not struggle at all. She could only make some vague ancient god language, trying to express her anger and dissatisfaction. But Ryudo did not plan to pay attention to her anger, and carefully, bit by bit, he thoroughly tasted Ayam, as if he was tasting a cup of old poison wine. How long did this humiliating situation last? Ayam did not know. She only knew that every second of the torture felt like a year. When Ryudo finally let her go, this woman had already fallen on the bed in a daze, her eyes empty, swollen cherry lips slightly open, looking like there was nothing left to live for. After a moment, Ayam said in a weak but bitter tone, "Kill you. I will use the cruelest method to kill you." She used the softest expression to say the harshest words. At this moment, Ayam was very different from her usual domineering and even crazy self. However, it was this attitude that made her words seem especially true. The current Ayam was no longer crazy. She was truly going crazy. Originally, she had invited Ryudo, this prey, into the manor, and even prepared a bunch of capture settings. She wanted to capture this rare man she liked as a plaything and play with him wantonly. But who would have thought that Young-ji would be the one to be caught? And she would even be toyed with by her own plaything. It was as if you wanted to catch a cat, but it threw you back into the cage and played with you with a cat teaser outside. It was a great humiliation. It could be said that Ayam had never been so humiliated in her life. So now Ayam was too lazy to think about treating Ryudo as a plaything. She was thinking about how to kill this man, ruthlessly kill him. Although her posture was like a vengeful spirit from hell, Ryudo sneered and said, "Are you an idiot? Now it's not you who wants to kill me, but I want to kill you. Think about whether you can survive first before saying anything else." After being mercilessly ridiculed by Ryudo, Ayam, who was lying on the bed and looking at the ceiling, gritted her teeth, but she couldn't refute a word. After all, what Ryudo said was the truth. Now Ayam was the one who was caught and thrown into the cage. There were indeed a lot of traps in this room, but in the situation where her hands and feet couldn't move, Ayam couldn't trigger those traps at all. She couldn't even shout at her subordinates outside. Speaking of which, the only thing Ayam could rely on now was the heartbeat bomb connected to her heartbeat. There was a special chip installed in Youngji's heart. As long as her heart stopped beating, the chip would send out a message for the bomb to explode. At that time, the entire manor and all living creatures, within a certain range of the manor, would not be able to survive. But Ayam knew this trump card, and so did Ryudo. So he didn't plan to kill Ayam here, otherwise, it would only be a waste of his previous efforts. After taking a few steps back, Ryudo looked at the woman on the bed wearing a light spaghetti strap nightgown, shook his head and said, "You're not dressed well. Change into something that can be seen." Before he finished, he ran to the side of the wardrobe and rummaged through it. After finding a set of seemingly ordinary clothes, he walked towards Ayam. Seeing him walk over with the clothes, Ayam couldn't help but be angry. "What do you want to do? Don't tell me you want to change. Whoa. Don't be noisy. You are now in a state of being kidnapped. You don't have the right to speak." After taking a handkerchief and stuffing the woman's mouth, Ryudo shook his finger at her. But Ayam immediately stuck out her tongue and spat out the handkerchief that was stuffed into her mouth. She mocked, "Please have some common sense. Using a handkerchief or something like that won't be able to shut someone's mouth. Do you think you are in a TV show? Thanks for the reminder." Pa. So in the next moment Ryudo, who was ridiculed, took out the familiar, hooligan Velcro and stuck Ayam's mouth firmly. She could only struggle with woo-woo sounds. After that, it was the Barbie doll costume show that Ryudo had never played before. Because Ayam was wearing a light and seductive nightgown, she really couldn't go out to see people. Ryudo kindly helped her change into a set of clothes so that he could kidnap her out. Otherwise, it would be easy to cause serious misunderstandings. But in the process of helping her change, Ayam's eyes were always burning with murderous intent, but she couldn't do anything about it. She could only secretly mark Ryudo in her heart. After changing Ayam's clothes, Ryudo picked her up and smiled. "Okay, let's go out for a walk now." "Woo-woo. Woo-woo. Go out? Where to?" "Of course to go out of the manor. I don't feel at ease in your territory. Why don't you come to my house as a guest?" What? Go out of the manor? The moment she heard this sentence, Ayam's eyes suddenly widened, and her body began to struggle violently. In this manner, she still had her biggest trump card heartbeat bomb. If she died, she could drag Ryudo down with her. That could be considered as revenge. But if she was dragged out of the manor by Ryudo, then Ayam would really die in vain. She wouldn't even have the chance to take revenge. Speaking of which, Ayam was actually not afraid of death. She was afraid of dying in vain. If she could take Long Do with her when she died, that would be acceptable. Otherwise, it would be an earth-shattering loss for her. She would lose everything she had. Although Ayam was a pervert, she couldn't lose her underwear, right? So when she was carried out of the room by Ryudo, she couldn't help but be furious. Her originally beautiful face was flushed red, and she looked like she was about to be suffocated by a hooligan's Velcro around her mouth. But although Ayam's movements were loud, Ryudo didn't care about her. Instead, he opened the door openly. And the moment he opened the door, the surveillance camera in the corridor, not far away, directly shone in this direction. There were surveillance cameras everywhere in this manner, and enemies were everywhere. If Ryudo wanted to take away I Am quietly, it was definitely impossible. He could only take the route of breaking through by force. So at this time, Ryudo walked out while wearing a small communicator in his ear, and pressed the communication button. Beep beep. Almost a second later, this special communication channel was connected directly to Colored Glaze in the distant command center. The moment the communication was connected, Colored Glaze first breathed a sigh of relief, then quickly asked, "Phew. Ryudo, what's the situation now?" Speaking of which, Ryudo had been in this manner for quite some time. If there was still no news from his side, Colored Glaze and the others were already considering whether to attack or not. "I'm fine," Ryudo smiled and said. "I just became a real kidnapper, and was about to kidnap I Am. It seems that you have to help me." "Kidnap I Am? Kidnap her?" Hearing this sentence, Colored Glaze in the command center hurriedly felt joy in her heart, and then she was shocked. She said, "I'll immediately arrange for a large force to go in and provide support. Don't act recklessly for the time being. Just stabilize the situation first." Colored Glaze was not stupid. After hearing Ryudo's words, she knew that he had already restrained I Am, but the manor was the nest of the Heavenly Eye group, and there were all kinds of enemies inside. It was definitely a life-threatening task to kidnap her, and it was definitely impossible to rely on Ryudo alone. "Understood, I should be fine here for the time being. Hurry up and come over." "Master, I Am. Damn it." Just as Ryudo said, "Hurry up and come over to provide support," he was walking in the carpeted corridor in the big house with I Am in his arms, and he happened to hear an angry shout from the other end of the corridor. Ryudo looked up and saw that Linhua had already appeared at the other end of the corridor with a group of mercenary guards, and she was rushing over here aggressively. "Someone is coming. I'll hang up first." After being quickly blocked, Ryudo hung up the communication device after informing Colored Glaze. Then he looked at the guard department head, Teshima Linhua, who was angrily looking at him. That's right. The one who appeared at this time was the guard department head, Teshima Linhua, and not the perverted female Linhua that Ryudo knew before. When she saw that her boss was kidnapped, even Linhua immediately went into work mode, and she picked up a pistol from her waist and pointed it at Ryudo's head. The leader of the Black Wings Ninja had launched a surprise attack on Ryudo and slapped him away as if he was swatting a fly. He even disfigured Ryudo. Of course, in the eyes of others, Huanan's bloody face was really embarrassing, but Huanan knew that this was the result of his successful dodge at the last moment. If it weren't for Huanan's reaction speed that was close to the human limit, and quickly twisted his waist, that whip might have sent his head flying. This guy, what kind of monster is he? Why does he feel so much stronger than the last time we met? At this time, Huanan looked at Ryudo, who still had his back facing him, as if he had seen a ghost. He couldn't help but secretly clench his teeth, and at the same time, his purely mechanical right arm slowly raised a little. After being broken by Longdo a few months ago, Huanan's right arm had become a mechanical arm that was equipped with all kinds of high-tech weapons. There were poison needles, automatic rifles, smoke bombs, small rockets, and so on. There were all kinds of weapons. But even so, Longdo couldn't be bothered to look at him. Instead, he sneered without turning his head. "With those lousy things of yours, it's better if you don't take them out and embarrass yourself." After that, he swaggered all the way forward with I Am in his arms, toward Linhua and the dozens of mercenary guards behind her. Seeing Ryudo arrogantly walking toward her, Linhua couldn't help but frown and said, "Don't move, otherwise we will really shoot." Whoosh! Before her voice died away, a group of mercenary guards behind her also raised their standard submachine guns and aimed at Ryudo in a very professional posture. The dozens of people's movements were like one person. A group of mercenary troops personally led by the head of the guard department, must be the best of the best in terms of combat effectiveness. They could shoot wherever they wanted, but when so many guns were pointed at him, Ryudo was too lazy to show any signs of fear. Instead, he smiled and slightly retracted his hand that was holding Iam's neck. Crack! In an instant, there was a sound of bones rubbing against each other from Iam's slender neck. Although there was still a little distance between them, in this corridor that was so dead silent that even a pin drop on the carpet could be heard, the sound clearly entered everyone's ears. 1 second. After that, Ryudo smiled at Lin Hua and said, "If I want to take her life, it will take at most 1 second. You can bet on whether the bullet will fly faster, or I will crush your boss neck faster." It had to be said that these words sounded a little silly and pretentious. After all, normal people would not use 1 second as a unit of measurement. But Ryudo was not joking, nor was he being silly. He could indeed do this in such a short amount of time. From the scene where he sent Huanan flying like lightning and disfigured her face, it was clear that this was the case. Damn it! Lin Hua naturally knew about Ryudo's ability. He could only grit his teeth and said, "What do you want? Give me your conditions." "There are no conditions. I just want to get out of here alive. It's that simple. It's that simple. As long as I can leave this manor safely, I will immediately release Iam. You won't refuse such a condition, right?" Hearing this, Lin Hua decisively replied, "No problem. I can make the decision to let you go, as long as you immediately release Iam after leaving the manor." Ryudo heard this and laughed. "Hee, that's for sure. If I touch her, won't I be chased down 9 streets? I'm timid and can't take this kind of shock." Logically speaking, Lin Hua's reply was actually not a problem. After all, in this terrible situation where the boss was being held hostage, the first thing to protect was the boss's life. Even if Lin Hua did not know that there was a heartbeat bomb under the manor, it was still the same. However, the moment Lin Hua agreed, Iam, who was in Ryudo's arms, glared at Lin Hua desperately, as if she wanted to convey some information to him. Speaking of which, Iam could not speak now. If she could speak, she would probably scold Lin Hua on the spot. "Are you kidding me? Let Ryudo leave the manor? Make a deal with this bastard? Is there something wrong with his brain?" In Iam's view, she did not believe that Ryudo would let her go after leaving the manor. On the contrary, as soon as she left here and left the threat range of the heartbeat bomb, this guy might immediately take her life. For some reason, Iam always felt that Ryudo seemed to know that there was a big bomb buried under the manor, so he had no intention of killing her in the manor. However, this situation could only be maintained until Ryudo left the manor. If Ryudo really held Iam hostage outside the manor, then Iam was sure that he would immediately kill her in the next moment and twist her neck into a fried dough twist. The most wonderful thing was that after that, he could still watch Lin Hua, Huanan, and others in the manor being directly sent to the sky by the heartbeat bomb. What being chased down 9 streets, what being timid, it was simply bullsh*t. Thinking of this, Iam, who was held in his arms, couldn't help but struggle violently. At the same time, her mouth that was wrapped by Velcro also made woo. At this moment, what Iam wanted to express was, "I can't let him take me out. Otherwise, everything will be over." But in Lin Hua's view, Master Iam was just unwilling to let Ryudo go like this. She would even risk her life to keep him here. So she persuaded, "Master Iam, it's more important that you can get out of danger than anything else. Let's talk about other things after that." "Well, wait. Woo. It's only after he takes me out that my life will be in danger." Although Iam tried hard to send a message to Lin Hua with woo and eyes, the reality was that she couldn't send the correct message. The biggest problem here was that Iam knew about the existence of the heartbeat bomb. But Lin Hua and others didn't know. They didn't know that as long as Ryudo left the manor, he could really do whatever he wanted. He could twist Iam's head in any direction he wanted. On the other hand, as long as they stayed in the manor, Ryudo couldn't kill them, because it would only cost his own life. For this, Ryudo himself was naturally the most clear. Thus, when he saw Yongji continuously struggling in his arms, He laughed softly beside her ear. Don't shout. It's useless. You can only blame yourself for hiding everything. Now you're in big trouble, aren't you? You deserve it. As soon as the words deserve it came out, Ryudo smiled and continued to carry I am forward. Looking at the way he swaggered out, it was as if the large circle of mercenaries and black feather ninjas around him were air. In this situation, how could he be so arrogant? But at this moment I am, who was in Ryudo's arms, immediately calmed down. Her two shifty eyes turned, as if she had thought of a way to fight back. Including all kinds of weapons that suddenly appeared from the vases, walls, and ceiling in the hall. At least a few hundred guns were aimed at Ryudo. Under such a dense net of fire, even if Ryudo was an Iron Man, a round of bullets would be able to turn him into a pile of mud. TSK. Suddenly, Ryudo could only stay in the center of the hall on the first floor. His position was about 50 meters away from the door where Dunya and the others were. It was not far, but it was not close either. Seeing Ryudo being pointed at by a bunch of guns, Dunya anxiously yelled, Ryudo! I'm going to. Don't move. Don't come over. Ryudo hurriedly made a stop gesture to Dunya, forbidding her from moving to the center of the hall. After all, this place was full of guns and traps. Dunya and the others were waiting at the door, but rashly rushing in was simply courting death. When they saw that Long Do had finally stopped, Lin Hua, Huanan, and the others who had caught up from behind also breathed a sigh of relief. They walked down the hall and surrounded Long Do. At this moment, the situation in the hall of the manor became very subtle. The leader of the Black Hand Alliance, Ryudo, stood in the center of the hall, holding the boss of the Heavenly Eye group, I am. At the entrance of the hall stood Dunya, the Amen family, and a group of Black Hand Alliance elite members. Inside the hall stood Lin Hua, Huanan, and a group of Heavenly Eye group elite members. For a moment, these two groups of people formed a subtle balance in the spacious hall. Both sides pointed their weapons at each other, but opposite each side stood the important leaders of their own families. 400 eyes were staring at each other in the air. Sparks flew everywhere. Many people did not even dare to breathe loudly, for fear of breaking the balance. It was stuck. The image was stuck just like that. The current situation was that Ryudo wanted to go forward, but Lin Hua did not want him to go forward. Previously, they agreed that once Ryudo left the manor, Iam would be released. But if Ryudo met up with the Black Hand Alliance, then even if he left, it would be impossible to release Iam. So Lin Hua said sternly, Ryudo Kiryu, tell your people to retreat. You can leave, but you must be escorted by us. On the other side, Dunya also retorted, Are you an idiot? You call that escorting? You will definitely shoot Ryudo in the back. Shut up. This is not the time for a little girl like you to speak. How could Dunya be willing to suffer losses? After being scolded by Lin Hua, she immediately sneered. Now your boss is in the hands of my boss. Why are you talking so loudly? Aren't you afraid that your boss's head will fall to the ground? How dare you? Why wouldn't I dare? Tenmu Iam is a scum who has done many evil things. It is God's blessing that she is still alive today. This kind of person should choke to death on the spot while eating. Stinky brat. You. Cough. Cough 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 cough. Before Lin Hua could scold back angrily, Iam, who was in Ryudo's arms, suddenly twitched violently. Traces of blood seeped out of the Velcro wrapped around her mouth, and at the same time, her face quickly swelled red. Woo! Woo 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 woo! At that moment, Iam began to struggle, as if she was suddenly out of breath. Her eyes were wide open, and her neck kept making swallowing movements. But there seemed to be something stuck in her throat, causing her to be unable to breathe normally. What is this? It can't be so poisonous, right? When they saw this scene, Lin Hua and Dunya were almost stunned at the same time. Just now, Dunya said that this kind of person should choke to death on the spot while eating, and now Iam showed signs of choking to death? What is this? Was it the spirit language spell? Words were law. Of course, this situation was not the soul language spell, but Iam's last resistance. This girl bit her tongue to commit suicide? When he saw Iam in his arms, who seemed to be about to choke to death, Ryuto was shocked by her. Indeed, Ayam basically couldn't do anything now, but the only thing she could do freely was to do something with her mouth, such as biting off her tongue. Generally, the scene of biting one's tongue to commit suicide in TV series was not the same as the scene in reality. Normally, biting off one's tongue would not kill one, but one might choke to death. After all, when the tongue was bitten off, the remaining half of the tongue in the mouth would retract to the back of the throat, blocking the trachea. Coupled with a large amount of blood and saliva mixed together, it was easy to suffocate to death, especially in the case of Ayam, whose mouth was already entangled with Velcro. As long as she bit off her tongue, she would basically choke to death. Hee hee ha 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 ha. At this time, although Ayam was very uncomfortable from choking, her eyes were filled with a crazy smile. Ryuto Kiryu, don't you want my life? Then take it, but you and your cute little wife will have to accompany me to the Yellow Springs underworld. Ha 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 ha. Crazy, this girl is crazy. Ryuto naturally knew Ayam's thoughts. As long as she stopped her heart, the heartbeat bomb under the manor would immediately detonate. No one nearby would be able to escape. This kind of self-destructive move to kill 1,000 enemies was really not something a madman could do. But it did indeed push Ryuto to a desperate situation. Because when she saw the sudden change on Lady Ayam's side, as if she was about to choke to death, Lin Hannah suddenly could not hold it in anymore. She obviously thought that this situation was caused by Ryuto, so she quickly shouted, "Fire! Fire! Kill them! Take back Lady Ayam!" With the order of Lin Hannah, in addition to the group of mercenaries behind her, and the group of black feather ninjas, led by Huanan, the automatic machine guns and turrets, and other defensive facilities around the hall also began to move quickly. Although this was very likely to hurt Lady Ayam, Lin Hannah did not care so much. The situation was getting worse, so she might as well take the last gamble. Otherwise, she could only watch Lady Ayam die under Ryuto's dirty trick. Oh no, I can't dodge so many bullets. At that moment, Ryuto instinctively picked up Ayam, who was about to choke to death, and jumped to the side. But there happened to be a few machine gun turrets in front of him. The bullets of these automatic machine gun turrets hit Ryuto at such a close distance, and it could cause fatal injuries. The worst thing was that Ayam, who was in his arms, might also be killed by the turrets. As long as Ayam died, this game would be restarted. So many things before would be meaningless. So now Ryuto not only had to ensure that he did not die, but also that Ayam did not die. He also had to find a place to heal her as soon as possible. But the automatic machine gun turrets in front of him, just as Ryuto was about to try to block the turret bullets with his arm in front of him, a strange sound suddenly came from the entire hall. Immediately afterward, the chandelier hanging at the top of the hall immediately went out, and the various turrets and defensive measures that were originally powered suddenly stopped moving. It seemed that someone had cut off the various electrical devices in the manor at this critical moment. The only one who could do this should be Sensible alone. Obviously, he had hacked into the manor at this time and cut off the power in the hall. Well done, Sensible. Seeing that the turret in front of him did not fire any bullets, Ryuto also quickly jumped forward with Ayam in his arms. He dodged the rain of bullets from Lin Hannah's side and smashed open a corridor window leading to the second floor. Bang! With the sound of the window shattering, Ryuto and Ayam disappeared from the hall at the same time. Chapter 361. When Ryuto and Ayam jumped towards the second floor's corridor, half of the people in the room looked in that direction, while the other half didn't. Spread out. Spread out. In fact, the moment Lin Hannah's mercenaries were about to open fire, the captain of the Dragon Fang squad, who was dispatched from the Rulong Security Company, gave the order to disperse. Bang! 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 For a moment, deafening gunshots were heard in the spacious hall. Lin Hannah's guards raised their guns and fired back, while the Dragon Fang squad also returned fire under the command of their captain. The hall was suddenly filled with gunshots and flames filled the air. From the moment the first round of gunshots were heard, this place was no longer a manor, but a battlefield, a place where people could die at any time. The Heavenly Eye Group's mercenaries were madly shooting at the door from across the hall, while the Dragon Fang squad was dodging and firing back. Because both sides were elite soldiers, only a few corpses were left after the first round of gunfire. More and more members from both sides began to surround and circle around, expanding the battlefield to cover the entire building, not just the hall. But just as the two sides were about to enter the battle zone, a few shadows quickly circled around the corridor from the back and chased after Ryudo through the window. The movement speed of these shadows was extremely special. They lowered their bodies and ran down the stairs to the second floor. Their speed was even faster than a sprinter. They were as fast as lightning. Chase them. We must catch up to Ayam-sama. In that instant, the group of black shadows that rushed directly to the second floor was naturally Huanan and the elite black feather ninja he led. After leaving a portion of the ninjas to deal with the battle in the hall, Huanan wanted to lead the elites to catch up to Ryudo and kill him. At the very least, they had to snatch back Ayam-sama, because the Black Feathers ninjas were too fast, and their movements were too stealthy. The Amon clan and the Dragon Fang squad didn't even notice their movements. Instead, they were focused on exchanging fire with the mercenaries of the guard department. But even if most of the people present didn't have the energy to deal with the situation on the other side, there was still one person who could catch up with the group of ninjas. At this time, Dunya, who was hiding behind a pillar in the hall, happened to see a few shadows rushing to the second floor. So she immediately said to Amon beside her, "I'll leave this place to you guys, I'm going up." "Don't worry, kill to your heart's content." The current head of the Amon clan nodded. Then he took out a remote control car from somewhere and drove it to the opposite side of the hall. Boom! With a deafening explosion, Amon's remote car assassination technique directly exploded against the wall of the hall. Several guards were blown up into the air, and a large amount of dust was also raised. Thanks! Dunya saw the situation and immediately lowered her body and ran out of the pillar. She rushed towards the direction where Ryudo went up the stairs. The place where Ryudo went up the stairs was above the wall of the hall on the first floor, and it happened to be where the window on the second floor was located. It was about 5 meters from the ground. Seeing a petite figure rushing towards the wall, the mercenaries quickly raised their assault rifles and pulled the trigger on Dunya without hesitation. Tut-tut-tut. Tut-tut-tut-tut-tut. The continuous sound of gunfire followed by the rain of bullets enveloped Dunya's petite body, but she only slightly covered her head with her arms, and without hesitation, she jumped towards the broken window. Is this little girl crazy? The few people who saw this scene all had the same thought in that instant. The assault rifle bullets were already fired towards Dunya's direction, but she didn't dodge or run, and instead made a jumping action? This little girl shouldn't think that she is invulnerable to bullets, and that she can jump 5 or 6 meters from this distance, right? Well, in fact, Dunya did think so. Whoosh! Bang! The next moment, several bullets hit the petite body, including the arms, abdomen, legs, and so on. But what made the mercenaries' eyes widen was that the bullets hit the target. But at this time, there was no movement at all. It was no different from not hitting. Yes, the bullets hit, but Dunya's movements were not slowed at all, and there were no bullet holes or bleeding on her body, as if the bullets were just tickling her. Boom! Then, her seemingly slender right leg, which was stronger than an elephant, stepped on the ground, and an even more exaggerated scene appeared. In the hall, gunshots were heard everywhere, and smoke filled the air. Meanwhile, Dunya's petite body abruptly leaped into the air, reaching a height of more than 5 meters like a celestial being. She directly rushed into the glass window that Ryudo had just smashed. What the hell is this? Why is there a ghost in the middle of the day? The few mercenaries who were lucky enough to witness this scene were all dumbfounded, because this situation was completely beyond their understanding of humans. Indeed, that scene did seem a little exaggerated. After all, how could a living human not be afraid of assault rifle bullets and still be able to jump 5 meters vertically? But the reason why Dunya was able to do this, other than her inhuman LV5 physique, The 3 pieces of equipment that Ryudo gave her in Moscow were also very important. Rogue's gel body armor, together with her physique, could completely block most bullets. Rogue's supercharged gloves, together with her physique, could completely overturn a car with one punch. Rogue's turbo shoes, together with her physique, could completely jump to a height of 2 or 3 floors. With the support of these 3 special equipment, the current Dunya could be said to be a high-quality human monster, second only to Ryudo. Unless she was hit in the head by a sniper rifle or a bomb at close range, it was really difficult to kill her. And it was because of this that after Dunya jumped to the second-floor corridor, she turned her head and saw the group of black feather ninjas running towards the end of the corridor. In an instant, Dunya didn't say much, but instead, she lowered her body and used a very special way to swing her legs. Her whole body turned into a white light and chased after the group of black shadows. Dunya's speed was also very fast, even faster than the group of ninjas in front of her, who were famous for their assassination. What was even more exaggerated was that when she rushed, she wasn't as light as the group of ninjas in front of her. Instead, every step she took seemed to make a big hole in the floor of the corridor. Boom! Boom! Boom boom boom! What's going on? Is there an elephant chasing from behind? Feeling the strong movement behind the corridor, Hwanin couldn't help but turn his head to look, but he saw a petite white figure quickly approaching like a ghost. This girl is the young miss of the Saitu Guild, Saitu Dunya? As the leader of the Black Feather Ninjas, Hwanin naturally had the detailed information of almost all the members of the Black Hand Alliance, with Ryudo as the core of the Black Hand Alliance. According to the information, Saitu Dunya was also a warrior. In the industry, people called her Silver Violent Bear. Although she was young, her fighting ability was extremely strong. TSK, now we are busy chasing Ayam. Sama, we don't have time to deal with her. From Hwanin's point of view, he was already a certain distance away from Ryudo, who was carrying Ayam. It was not easy to catch up with the two in front of him. If he was delayed by Dunya here, it would be even more impossible. So Hwanin shouted to a young subordinate next to him, "Shinobu, go and kill the kid behind." Yes. After receiving the order from his leader, the top assassin of the Black Feather Ninjas, Shinobu quickly nodded and responded with a weak voice that was almost inaudible. Shinobu, from the appearance, he was a very thin young man. His body was as thin as a 13 or 14-year-old boy. His delicate face was as white as a sheet of paper. Even in the daytime, he looked like a living ghost. But when he quickly stopped, turned around, and rushed toward Dunya at the back of the corridor, a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. The young miss of the Saitu Guild, Saitu Dunya. A year ago, I didn't kill you at the Tokyo Emperor Hotel. And now you take the initiative to come to me. It seems that you are destined to die in my hands. That's right, a year ago, Tokyo Emperor Hotel. During the kidnapping of Dunya, Shinobu did have a chance to meet with Dunya, and he almost assassinated her father in front of her. But looking at the situation later, Saitu Takahiro didn't die, and Shinobu's assassination failed, which made this young genius of the Black Feather Ninjas very upset. Now is the right time. Let's use you as a sacrifice first. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Shinobu's body turned into a black light. When he rushed toward Dunya, his body stepped on the wall and flew up, and with the help of the ceiling, he flew in a beautiful triangular trajectory in the narrow corridor. Black Feather Inner Technique, Triangle Flying Shadow. Whoosh! A black light, a sharp black luster appeared from Shinobu's sleeve, and from a very strange angle, it stabbed toward Dunya's head. The Black Feather Ninjas were usually known for their powerful inner techniques, but Shinobu was obviously an anomaly in this group, and he walked the path of speed. By minimizing his weight, he gave up his strength in exchange for super high speed that was almost beyond human limits. This kind of Shinobu almost didn't have the ability to fight head-on, but with the custom-made black feather blade that could even cut through steel, his assassination ability was shocking. So at this moment, Shinobu seemed to have seen Dunya's death. Chapter 362. Of course, This was a matter of course. His body flickered like lightning, and his blade was as dark as a shadow. No one could defend against such a lightning strike from a strange angle. Or rather, Shinko thought no one could defend against it. However, when the hidden blade was less than half a meter away from Dunya, the true snake saw the eyes of the Saito family's eldest daughter. The pair of clear and bright pupils were exuding a nostalgic look, as if she didn't care about this attack at all. Nostalgic? Why is there nostalgia in her eyes? Is she reminiscing about her past before she dies? Although Shinko thought so, in fact, Dunya didn't miss her past, but she missed the night that changed her life more than a year ago. For Dunya, it was from that moment that her life began to move on the right track. The large-scale celebration of the 300th anniversary of Saito Guild Hall, the shocking assassination in Tokyo Emperor Hotel, and the pursuit that lasted until the middle of the night after she was kidnapped. On that day, her father's chest was pierced by a sword, and he fell in a pool of blood. On that day, the pitch-black sword light pierced towards his chest. On that day, a young man stepped forward and saved the father and daughter. From that day onwards, Dunya's life was tied to Ryudo's, and at the same time, it was also tied to the word martial arts. It had been more than a year since that day that changed her life. The current Miss Saito was no longer the girl who could only tremble in fear when facing the blade that killed her father. The same action, the same person, but a different scene. It was the same ghost-like thin young assassin, the same pitch-black hidden blade, and the same death god's thorn that was falling towards Dunya. However, in Dunya's eyes, this seemingly terrifying attack was no threat at all. Yes, no threat at all. The black feather inner technique, triangle flying shadow, that the real snake was so proud of, and its super-fast speed was like a bat baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in front of Dunya. No matter how fast the bat was, no matter how scary it looked, it would never be able to defeat the bear. Moreover, Dunya was not an ordinary bear. She was a bear that had undergone strict martial arts training, been strengthened by the hell butterfly medicine, and was equipped with a bunch of pay-to-win equipment. She was a bear that had been completely sublimated from the inside out. She could be said to be a tyrant among bears. Thus, just as the real snake's blade was about to pierce through Dunya's head, her figure disappeared from her original position. What? In the next moment, the corners of the true snake's mouth that had been curling up slightly turned into a surprised curve. Dunya clearly did not move. She was clearly in the same spot. However, just as the sword was about to hit her forehead, the girl suddenly disappeared. It didn't make sense. At least from the perspective of a real snake, it didn't make sense at all. However, this strange movement method that did not make sense was one of the three great mysteries of the ancient style, called Furamaki-style martial arts. It was also the last and strongest mystery. Furamaki-style martial arts, profound meaning of the heart receiving. It was different from profound meaning of skill tiger fall, which interrupted the opponent's unfinished attack and caused a counterattack, as well as profound meaning of body hard hit, which directly contracted one's muscles to take the attack and cause a counterattack. Profound meaning of the heart receiving was to see through the enemy's attack flow, and when the enemy's attack was completed, dodge and counterattack. The terrifying part of receiving was that the user had to dodge at the last moment of the attack, which was also commonly known as extreme dodge. The last moment of the attack was also the moment when the enemy's attention was the most relaxed, because he was certain that his attack had hit. At that moment, using a planned movement path to dodge out of the attack range as quickly as possible, it would give the impression that the target had disappeared right under his nose. However, although this sounded simple, it was not easy to do. First, one had to have the eyesight to see through the enemy's attack flow, as well as the courage to dodge at the last moment. Of course, the current Dunya must have done it perfectly, which was why the real snake looked like he had seen a ghost. After dodging the attack, Dunya had already arrived at the side of the real snake that had yet to land on the ground. With a seemingly simple movement, she pushed her palm upwards, hitting the hitman in the abdomen. PFFF. At the same time that it was pushed by the palm, the real snake felt as if all of its internal organs were rising up at that moment, all of them lining up to rush out of its mouth. His thin and weak body crashed into the 4 to 5 meter high ceiling with a loud bang. Half of his body was embedded in the ceiling. A single palm strike could send a person from midair to the 4 to 5 meter ceiling, and embedded in it without falling back down. What kind of terrifying strength was this? What is this? Before the real snake could react to what had happened, his consciousness had already rapidly ascended to the clouds. At this moment, the assassin's body was embedded in the ceiling of the manor's corridor, and his eyes were wide open. His mouth was slightly open, and the back of his head had softened into the shape of a tofu pudding. Naturally, he couldn't be more dead. Farewell, go to the other world and regret your actions. After glancing at the bastard assassin who had already been turned into a world-famous painting, Dunya quickly continued to chase the real snake. Although the previous series of exchanges seemed to have lasted for a long time, but in fact, from the time the real snake left the Black Wings Ninja unit and was turned into a famous painting by Dunya, at most, only 2 to 3 seconds had passed. Such a top-level assassin, a top-level ninja, who made Dunya tremble more than a year ago, but now in front of Miss Saito, he could only block for 2 to 3 seconds. He was no different from trash. After quickly dealing with the real snake, Dunya continued to chase in the direction of the Mirage Temple. Don't even think about interfering with Ryudo, you bunch of trash. Watch me knock you into the wall one by one. As she chased after Yonkai, Dunya's body was filled with a surging murderous aura. Coupled with her rumbling steps, she looked extremely imposing. While Dunya and the ninjas continued the game of chase on the second floor, on the first floor, in the surrounding garden, and the pavilion, a bloody battle was still ongoing. Hee hee ha 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 ha. Again. Outside the mansion, accompanied by the roar of the Amon clan leader Amon Ichi, his figure was particularly eye-catching as he rushed towards the enemy with his 2 long-handled axes. Bang! 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 Several mercenary guards of the security department also shot at Ichi from various angles, but some of the bullets were dodged by him, and the other part was blocked by the high-speed rotating axes. The battle axe blocked the bullets. After blocking dozens of bullets, the battle axe chopped down on the back of a statue, causing the statue and the guards behind it to fall to the ground. At the same time, a ninja rushed out from a dark corner, trying to directly pierce the back of Ichi's head with his kunai. Tut tut tut. Tut 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 tut. But with the sound of submachine gun, the ninja didn't even touch Ichi, and he was shot into a sieve by Jiro, who came out from behind. With the continuous death of people, a thick smell of blood floated in the air in this area. The two forces fought more and more fiercely in this narrow space, and more corpses fell to the ground. Damn it! Are these guys the top powerhouses of the underground world? And what's the matter with those mercenaries? They are too elite. When the flames of war spread, as the head of the security department, Lin Hua was hiding behind a spring in the corner of the manor, tightly holding the pistol in his hand. The reason why the Heavenly Eye group was able to summon wind and rain everywhere was definitely one of the biggest reasons why the security department belonged to the group of elite mercenaries. The combat strength of this group was not something that ordinary mercenaries could contend with, but the group of Black Hand Alliance was able to fight on par with them. At this time, after the manor's defense facilities were paralyzed by Sensible's invasion, the two sides were fighting with real strength. It was a battle of life and death. Originally, Lin Hua thought that the elite troops under his command could quickly defeat the enemy, but he didn't expect the strength of the Dragon Fang squad to be quite good, and they also have the help of the 4 unreasonable big shots of the Amon clan. Damn it, I don't know how Sama is doing. Here it comes again. Just when Lin Hua was thinking whether was still alive in the big house not far away, a seemingly cute remote-controlled toy car had already circled around the spring. Boom! When Lin Hua hurriedly jumped to the side, the remote-controlled toy car also exploded, directly blowing the spring into pieces. Little girl, not bad, you didn't die from the explosion. In the smoke, Amon Zhang's figure slowly walked out, but he was immediately forced back into the corner by Lin Hua's gun. This Amon clan is basically a bunch of lunatics. Forget it, in any case. I still believe that Huanan can catch up and save Ayam-sama. Although Linhua was very concerned about the situation on the other side, she was currently facing the head of the Amon clan. She didn't have the chance to think about other things. From a certain point of view, the battle between Linhua and Amon Zhang could be considered a miniature version of the entire war. The battle between both sides was always in a stalemate. It was very difficult for one side to completely defeat the other. However, many of the main members of both sides were actually thinking about the two key figures who started this war, Ryudo Kiryu and Tenmu Ayam. What was the situation now? Chapter 363. In fact, when Ryudo quickly rushed to the second floor with Ayam in his arms, he was already running while tearing off the Velcro on Ayam's face and releasing the blood inside. Puchi! The moment the Velcro was torn off, a large amount of blood gushed out from Ayam's red lips, directly dyeing her and Ryudo's clothes red. This guy is really ruthless. I'm convinced. After quickly leaving Huanan behind, Ryudo rushed toward the stairs on the third floor with Ayam in his arms. At the same time, he reached into the woman's mouth and pulled out her bitten tongue. His hand went in, and it felt sticky. Blood and saliva were mixed together. Plus Ayam had been trying to close her teeth, making Ryudo's dragging action very difficult. But not long after, Ryudo successfully pried open her teeth and pulled out the tongue that had been bitten off more than half and was stuck in her throat. It was very difficult to bite off one's own tongue if one didn't have great perseverance. Especially when her mouth was sealed. He didn't know how she could bite like this. After finally being able to breathe smoothly, Ayam first showed a strange smile and said, "The mud smells so good. I wish I could go to Shida's nest and take Shidubu Lumi." Because her mouth was still full of blood, and half of her tongue was broken. Ayam's voice was very strange at this time. It was vague and could only be roughly heard. But even so, the provocative expression on her face vividly showed the attitude of the witch at this time. If she just wanted to thwart Ryudo's conspiracy, then Ayam had succeeded. Originally, Ryudo planned to take her out of the manor, and then take the opportunity to kill her, and then detonate the bomb to wipe out the elites of the Heavenly Eye Group. But now that the Heavenly Eye Group and the Black Hand Alliance were fighting, it was almost impossible for Ryudo to detonate the bomb, unless he wanted to kill Dunya and the others. Thump thump thump. Thump 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 thump. From the corridor behind, he could vaguely hear some hurried footsteps. Although it was very light, it was not difficult for Ryudo to find out that the group of Black Wing ninjas was following behind. Hiss. What should he do now? In short, he should leave the manor first. Although the current situation was somewhat complicated, the core idea would not change. First, he had to leave this dangerous manor, and then think about how to stop the war and kill Ayam. Long Do kept thinking in his mind while his feet didn't stop moving. He ran towards the rooftop at a very fast speed. Now that the first floor hall and the surroundings had become a battlefield, it would be troublesome to directly rush out, so it was better to leave from the top floor. As long as he reached the top floor, Ryudo could take out his Wallace and fly away with Ayam, then turn around and clean up the situation here. Then everything would be very simple. Just as Ryudo was thinking, he had already quickly carried Ayam to the 5th floor rooftop of the manor's main villa. But at this time, Ryudo, who stepped on the rooftop, happened to see a huge black shadow in the sky not far away. What is that thing? Is it a plane? Ryudo had never seen such a huge flying machine in his life. Its length and width was at least 5 times that of a normal plane. Flying in the sea of clouds was as shocking as a huge aircraft carrier. At this time, the black shadow was obviously slowly descending. The huge black body was like a mountain peak cutting through the clouds, plunging down to the ground. The scene was very spectacular. When the black shadow left the shroud of the clouds, Ryudo discovered that it was actually a huge heavy-duty airship. At first glance, it looked like a huge oval-shaped balloon, but below the balloon was a huge and complex structure like an aircraft carrier. This kind of huge heavy-duty airship fortress was very rare in recent years, Its synonym was the Zeppelin airship that was developed by the German Republic. However, compared to the sixth heavenly devil that had been built with the advanced technologies of the Heavenly Eye Group, the Zeppelin was like a child's toy. That's right, this huge heavy-duty airship was called the Sixth Heavenly Demon. Ryudo had seen this thing in the plot of Red Album 2, No Survivors. According to Ryudo's knowledge, this huge airship was the Heavenly Eye Group mobile fortress. IM had also ordered this airship to bomb many areas of Tokyo. But why did this thing appear here? Was it here to support IM? But wasn't it a little too exaggerated to drive this thing here? Suddenly, Ryudo couldn't help but look at IM in his arms, but he saw a trace of astonishment in her eyes. Indeed, it was indeed astonishment, because even IM herself didn't know that the sixth heavenly demon would appear here today. After all, this thing belonged to the category of war-killing machine. When it really started, it would throw down row after row of bombs, carpet bombing a certain area. Such a war-killing machine was completely meaningless in this kind of small-scale battle. Unless it wanted to blow up its own people, it could only float in the sky as a mascot. But obviously, this sixth heavenly demon didn't fly all the way here just to be a mascot, and IM could clearly see that the bomb hatch below was slowly opening. The bomb hatch opening was the precursor of preparing to bomb. IM had seen this scene many times. The sixth heavenly demon was preparing to bomb here? Could it be that Nicholas, that guy? The moment she thought of this, IM slightly frowned. She seemed to have understood why this heavy-duty airship would appear here without her knowing. At the same time, Ryudo, IM, Lin Hua, and the others in the manor below were extremely surprised by the sudden appearance of the behemoth in the sky. The man in a long trench coat standing in the main cockpit of the airship, Nicholas, gave the order to prepare for bombing. Do it! Raise the manor below to the ground. Although his big boss, Tenmu IM, Lin Hua, Huanan, and other colleagues were still in the manor, Nikolai did not hesitate to issue this order. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't hard to notice that there was another short man standing beside him. It was a man who appeared on a TV program not long ago and announced the Extreme Dao, 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 Extreme Dao. The current Golden Heron and Prime Minister of Japan Tanagawa Jinzo, or rather, the substitute of the man named Tanagawa Jinzo, had long rotted away in some stinky ditch. At this time the short old man, who was nominally the Prime Minister of Japan, smiled at Nikolai and said, Nikolai-sama is really clever. You can actually think of taking advantage of this opportunity to wipe out those guys in one fell swoop. It's really wonderful. According to what Tanagawa Jinzo knew, most of the high-end forces of the Tenmu Group and the Black Hand Alliance and the leaders of both sides were basically gathered in the manor. As long as the bomb fell and razed the manor to the ground, Nikolai-sama could rightfully take over everything in the Tenmu Group. After that, they only needed to eradicate the Black Hand Alliance that lacked the main force. At that time, they would be the king of this country. It's not that I did too well, but that woman has fallen. During this time, her attention was all on Ryudo Kiryu, and there was no way for her to control the overall situation. Instead, it benefited me. Looking at the situation in the manor below through the observation screen, Nikolai couldn't help but reveal a cruel smile. Nikolai was a man born with a rebellious nature. What he was best at was betrayal, and Motherf King betrayal. Speaking of which, Nikolai actually didn't have the intention to betray his boss at the beginning, who knew that his boss actually wanted to go on a date with the leader of the enemy, which made him think of something. Tenmu, a woman immersed in love can't have the power to change the world. Let me complete this great undertaking for you. With this in mind, Nikolai secretly planned the bombing operation. Because he was the head of the Ministry of War, and because he was also an old fox, it wasn't difficult to hide from IM, who was in love and had her attention on Ryudo. It just depended on whether he had the courage to do it. So at this moment, the huge sixth sky demon appeared out of nowhere and covered the entire sky of the manor. Let go of me. At this time IM, who was still in Ryudo's embrace, quickly said, Nikolai wants to indiscriminately bomb this place. Let go of me, or everyone here will die. What? Nikolai's guy rebelled? But it seemed to be quite normal. Ryudo also knew that Nikolai was born with a rebellious nature. But he didn't expect him to seize such a good opportunity to get rid of him, and I am in one fell swoop. The sixth sky demon. As carpet bombing was terrifying, Ryudo had seen it in the game. Moreover, there was a heartbeat bomb buried under the manor. If it really exploded, no one in the manor would be able to escape. Kacha! Kacha! At this critical moment, Ryudo quickly reached out and twisted Ayam's shoulder joints, allowing her to regain the ability to move her hands. After she could move her arms, Ayam didn't hesitate and immediately pressed the communication button on her collar. She used a muffled voice to order Ling Hua, who was in the manor, cease fire immediately. Everyone evacuate as fast as possible. I repeat, cease fire immediately. Everyone evacuate as fast as possible. At the same time, Ryudo also opened his communication device and said to Colored Glaze in the command center, immediately tell Dunya and the others to stop fighting and leave as fast as possible, or else. Rumble, rumble, rumble. When Ayam and Ryudo gave their orders, the huge airship in the sky had already dropped the first wave of unguided bombs. Chapter 364. Carpet bombing refers to the use of a large number of unguided bombs to bombard an area, killing and destroying the people and facilities in that area. At this time, a large number of unguided bombs fell from the sky, almost covering the entire area of the manor in the bombing zone. Retreat! Everyone retreat! Retreat immediately! Everyone retreat! Stop fighting! Evacuate as fast as possible! The bombs fell at almost the same time as Ayam and Colored Glaze's orders to retreat. At first, the people on both sides didn't understand why they had to retreat, but when they saw the bombs fall, they understood. Run! 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 If they don't run now, they'll be finished. For a moment, the entire manor was in chaos. Whether it was the mercenaries of the Heavenly Eye group, the Black Wing Ninjas, or the members of the Black Hand Alliance, Dunya, and the Amon clan, they all rushed out as fast as they could. Countless old enemies who were fighting each other just now also stopped fighting. They threw away their heavy firearms, ammunition, and other equipment, trying to get out of the bombing area as fast as possible. However, no matter how one looked at it, it was impossible to do so. The bombing area covered the entire manor, and even the surrounding area was at least a few hundred meters. Now that the bombs fell, it would hit the ground in less than 10 seconds. It was easier said than done to get out of the bombing area in a few seconds. Oh no, the manor's air defense system was hacked by your people, and now it can't fire automatically. Are we going to die here together? Looking at the rain of death falling from the sky, Ayam couldn't help but sigh. Originally, there was a complete air defense system in the manor, but the air defense system needed electricity to operate, otherwise it would be useless. Earlier, when Ryudo and the others were fighting in the hall, Luli had already made a wise arrangement. She hacked into the room and physically cut off the electric current with the help of a few guardian ninjas. Now the manor's computers couldn't be turned on, and most of the wires were cut. No matter how strong the air defense system was, it was useless. Without any defense system, this carpet bombing would definitely trigger the heartbeat bomb under the manor. At that time, Ayam and Ryudo wouldn't be able to escape from the explosion. But even at this time, Ryudo still shook his head and laughed. I don't want to die with you, that's too embarrassing. TCH, if you don't want to die, then think of a way. The bombs are about to fall. Oh. Before Ayam finished speaking, her body that was in Ryudo's arms was thrown to the ground. Longdo had only just corrected Yongji's shoulder joint. Her knee was still in a twisted state, so she could only sit on the ground after being thrown down. Ayam wanted to complain if he could be gentler, but when she looked up, she saw a magical scene. Because at this moment, in front of Ayam, Ryudo actually took out a huge rocket launcher from his crotch. It was a huge rocket launcher. The cylindrical body was about 1. 5 meters long, and the muzzle diameter was at least 10 centimeters. Carrying it on his shoulder was like carrying a small chimney. How did he hide such a large caliber rocket launcher on his body? Ayam had been in close contact with Ryuto many times just now. She was sure that Ryuto couldn't hide such a big thing on his body. Wait, could it be? It can't be. Suddenly, Ayam couldn't help but look at Ryuto's steep buttocks, and then made a bold assumption. But at this time, Ryuto obviously didn't care what Ayam thought. Compared to how he did the magic of hiding a rocket launcher in his crotch, it was more important to shoot down the bombs in the sky. Carpet bombing, is it? If even one of your bombs can land on the ground, then it's my loss. Carrying his beloved Rogue advanced rocket launcher, and aiming the muzzle in the direction of the sea of bombs, Ryuto didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Whoosh! Accompanied by a burst of explosive sounds, the huge 120mm rocket flew into the air, with a trail of black flame and sparks and lightning. The first wave of unguided bombs under the bomb port of the 6th Sky Devil was at least 50 to 60. If it landed on the ground, it would be enough to turn half of the manor into a sea of fire. But at this time, the huge rocket soared into the sky and directly hit the center of the unguided bomb formation from above. Whoosh! Boom boom! A loud noise came from the clear sky, causing panic among the fleeing crowd below. Did the bombs fall? Strictly speaking, they didn't, because they were detonated by Ryuto's rocket when they were at least 200 meters away from the ground. However, when these bombs exploded in midair, the sound they caused was extremely shocking. Continuous loud noises came one after another, and a blazing wave erupted in the air above the manor. The billowing smoke was like a sandstorm that covered the sky, and together with the strong wind pressure, it rolled down on the people below. In an instant, most of the people inside the manor, who didn't have time to run out, were instantly thrown to the ground by the blazing wave. Not only that, the green lawns, plants, and gardens of the manor quickly began to burn. Visible cracks appeared on the buildings, and the ground was filled with dust and rocks. The bomb fragments that weren't completely destroyed fell to the ground like raindrops. Flames, heat waves, strong winds, and debris mercilessly smashed into the fleeing crowd. Dark red blood splattered everywhere. Every second, there were people dying for various reasons. Ugh! This is... Damn it! In the midst of the fleeing crowd, Dunia's body stood firm at the edge of the manor, as if the terrifying explosion didn't pose any threat to her. She also casually dodged the few bomb fragments that were shot at her. In the chaos, the manor was on the verge of collapse, and flames soared into the sky. This was the situation where the bombs didn't directly fall to the ground, and were detonated. If so many bombs directly fell to the ground, then most of the people in the manor would have been turned into ashes, and even Dunia might not be able to escape. But now, although Dunia had almost escaped, her eyes were fixed on the roof of the villa in the middle of the manor. Because Dunia knew that Ryuto shouldn't have escaped yet. He should be there. And the rocket that just detonated was fired by him. Dragon Duel. You must come out unscathed. Dunia couldn't help but think to herself, as she looked at the thick sea of smoke and flames in the villa. Indeed, the manor's surroundings had been turned into a mess by the mid-air detonation. And the villa in the middle of the manor was even more heaty, as if it could cook people on the spot. But Ryuto and Ayam weren't ordinary people, so the two of them didn't even bat an eyelid in such a terrible situation. The flames burned their hair, and the thick smoke blackened their faces. The surrounding walls were starting to crack, but the two standing on the roof were still as calm as ever. Looking at the 6th Sky Demon that opened its bomb bay, Ayam reminded, that airship can only carry 200 bombs at most, only enough for 4 waves. The second wave is coming. Before he could finish his sentence, another rain of death quickly fell from the sky, mixed with the billowing smoke from the previous explosion, and flew toward the manor together with the violent winds and huge waves. Ryuto didn't hesitate to pull the trigger, and released 3 rockets in a row, causing the second wave of carpet bombing to be prematurely detonated. Boom! There was another wave of violent explosions, and the second wave of strong winds swept over, almost washing the entire manor once again. Almost all the trees were set ablaze, and the manor was ablaze. It was the color of hell. But fortunately, there weren't too many casualties this time. After all, most of the Heavenly Eye Group and Black Hand Alliance members had run to the periphery of the manor, to a safer distance. Seeing that the second wave of bombing didn't succeed in razing the manor to the ground, Nicholas in the Sixth Sky Demon frowned and shouted, "Throw all the remaining bombs down at once. We must blow them up." As the chief supervisor of the Sixth Sky Demon, Nicholas naturally knew how many bombs this airship could carry. And when the first two waves of bombing didn't have any substantial effect, this traitor couldn't bear it anymore, and decided to go all out. He had to blow up Iam and Ryudo. If he couldn't blow them up here, Nicholas knew what would happen to him. So under his command, the Sixth Sky Demon dropped all the bombs in the bomb bay. They were all aimed at the villa where Ryudo and Iam were. It doesn't matter how many waves come. I'll lure them all. Seeing the third and largest wave of bombs falling from the sky, Ryudo raised his rogue black tech rocket launcher, as usual, and prepared to fire more rockets to blow up the bombs prematurely. But at this moment, a black shadow appeared behind him like a bolt of lightning. At the same time the black shadow appeared, his right hand swung like a whip, and his index, middle, and nameless fingers stabbed towards Ryudo like the tip of a whip. His fingertips sliced through the air, and the air along the way seemed to be neatly cut in half. This was the Ninja Protector side's secret technique, Sacrificial Blade. Go to hell, Ryudo Kiryu. When he stabbed his killer move towards the back of Ryudo's neck, the so-called strongest ninja couldn't help but reveal a delighted smile. Chapter 365. For the little bastard Huanan to jump out at this time, not only Ryudo, but even Iam didn't expect it. How should one describe Huanan's current actions? There is a phrase that the ancestor used very well. It is called shitstirrer. The current situation is already deadly enough. There is a rain of bombs above their heads. The whole villa is shaking, and there is a sea of smoke and fire everywhere. Maybe in the next moment, everyone will line up to die together. And the rogue black tech rocket launcher in Ryudo's hand can be said to be everyone's last savior. As long as the rocket launcher fires a few times, it will detonate the last wave of bombs falling from above. At least it won't be difficult to save their lives. But in this case, Huanan still jumped out to stab Ryudo in the back. It's really hard to describe his actions other than shitstirrer. At the moment of shooting, Huanan's eyes were filled with blood-red killing intent, because he can't care about anything else now. Not long ago, in the process of rushing to the roof, Huanan saw that Dunya was about to catch up with him. So he used a substitution jutsu, which is to let his men pretend to be him, and escape to the garden outside. This is also one of the reasons why Dunya was outside the garden, and was able to escape in the first place. But after doing this, Huanan's self-esteem and power suffered a huge blow. In order to escape the pursuit of a little girl, he pushed all his capable men to their deaths. This kind of thing can be regarded as a disgrace, even in the most despicable ninja world. But Huanan is too lazy to care about this now, because he only wants one thing, and that is Ryudo's life. Kill him, kill him, kill him, no matter what, he must kill him. Huanan had a crazed expression on her face when she unleashed her inner skill, Sacrificial Blade, at Ryudo. Obviously, this mad dog is too lazy to care about the bombs flying everywhere in the sky, and he doesn't even care about how long he can live. All he wants now is Ryudo's life. Other things are not important at all. But even in this crazy situation, Huanan's attack is also very careful. The position of his blade sacrifice is very clever. It just hit the medulla oblongata located at the back of the head. This is a major vital part of the human body, and there is no muscle protection in this part. It is extremely fragile. Even with Ryudo's physical fitness, it is impossible to use this fragile vital part to resist the attack. If it hit him, he will definitely die. The most important thing was that Longdo's attention was on the rocket launcher in his hand. He was watching the bombs falling from the sky, and had no time or energy to deal with the illusion temple. It's over. Do I have to start over again? After perceiving Huan's attack, Ryudo can't help but shake his head. He can't avoid this attack now. If he dodges, the rocket launcher in his hand will definitely not hit the target, and the bombs falling from the sky will still blow the ground to ashes. But if he doesn't dodge, the medulla oblongata alone can't resist this attack, and he will still die. Thinking of this, Ryudo gave up futile resistance, stood in place, and pulled the trigger in his hand. Even if he dies, he must finish this shot. Anyway, for him, the worst case is to start over again. If he dies, then he dies. It's not like he hasn't died before. Zap! Thus, just as the rocket launcher fired an ear-piercing explosion, and the rocket flew up into the sky with black flames, the sound of a sharp weapon cutting came from behind Long-do. But strangely, Ryudo didn't feel anything at all. There is no pain of being stabbed in the medulla oblongata. Huh, what's going on? In the next moment, Long-do turned around and saw a scene that he couldn't believe. It's Ayam, the woman who was sitting next to Ryudo, the woman who can't move her legs freely. When Hwanan's blade was about to pierce the back of Ryudo's head, Ayam didn't hesitate to jump forward with her hands on the ground. She took out a small blade from her sleeve and slashed at Hwanan's leg. This slash didn't seem to be very powerful, but that unremarkable blade was incomparably sharp. It actually directly cut off Hwanan's left leg at the knee. The cut is as smooth as a mirror. Plop! Then Hwanan lost his balance and fell to the ground, and the blade in his hand was missing. The moment he fell to the ground, the huge wound on Hwanan's leg spurted out a lot of blood like a fountain, and he looked at his boss in disbelief, as if he didn't understand why his boss suddenly changed sides. So this Tianmu Group Intelligence Department head asked with fear, "Yong, Ayam-sama, you." Hwanan didn't expect that he would be stabbed in the back by Ayam-sama one day. Of course, Ayam also didn't expect that she would have such a stupid subordinate. At this time, he was still thinking about killing, as if he didn't care about the bomb rain in the sky. It doesn't matter if you want to die, but don't drag me to die with you, okay? If it wasn't for the unprecedented explosion in the sky, and the strongest wave of heat coming down together with the strong wind, Yongji really wanted to rain curses on the fantasy nunnery. But it was useless, or rather there was no point in doing so. Under the last wave of Nicholas's desperate all-out bombardment, although the bombs were detonated in mid-air, due to the sheer number of bombs, it still looked like a rain of fire was raining down from the sky. The heat wave rushed over, and large pieces of bomb fragments fell like meteorites, and the strong impact could almost blow an adult more than 10 meters away. Under such a terrifying explosion, the already ravaged villa finally couldn't hold on any longer. Instead, it began to collapse after a few seconds. Rumble! Suddenly, the top floor where Ryudo was standing shattered, and the balance under his feet was suddenly broken, making him somewhat unable to stabilize his body. If he stayed here any longer, he would only be crushed into minced meat by the collapsing villa and the shrapnel that filled the sky in a few seconds. Therefore, Long-do instinctively wanted to jump outside. It was said that this was the top floor of the 5th floor of the villa. But this height couldn't do anything to Ryudo now. As long as he jumped out, at least it wouldn't be a problem to save his life. However, just as Long-do was about to leave, he caught sight of the woman who was slumped on the ground not far away from him. Ryudo could run, but Ayam couldn't. In this chaotic situation, if she was left alone, the result would be that she would be buried like Hwanan, who had fallen into the crack, crushed into a pile of unrecognizable minced meat by hundreds of tons of building debris. Logically speaking, this situation should be what Ryudo wanted to see. After all, the purpose of his trip was to kill Ayam. But at the moment when he saw that she was about to fall into the abyss, Ryudo couldn't help but run over there and reach out to the woman. Why did he do this? Ryudo actually didn't know. Maybe he just didn't want to see Ayam die under the betrayal of a traitor, or he was afraid that after Ayam died, the heartbeat bomb underground would take him away, or there were some other reasons. But the moment he reached out his hand, Ayam looked up at Ryudo, but her eyes still carried the natural arrogance and toughness. Time paused for a second. In this second, Yongji didn't reach out to grab this hand, instead falling backwards, falling into the already collapsed building. "This, you would rather die than take me with you?" The moment he saw this scene, Ryudo only felt a chill all over his body and quickly jumped out. He opened the rogue glider and flew toward the manor with the help of the violent storm. As long as Iam died, the heartbeat bomb would detonate, and at that time, Ryudo wouldn't be able to survive. Therefore, he could only pray that Yongji was not crushed to death by some random thing after falling down. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would have been in vain. In the violent storm, Ryudo and his glider were like a big bird flying in the sky. But until he flew out of the manor and met with Dunya and the others, the explosion still didn't happen. Ryudo, great, you're still alive. When Long Do landed on the ground, Dunya, who had been waiting outside the manor, hurriedly ran over and clung to him like a big tree bear. Except for Dunya, most of the members of the Dragon Fong squad, including the Among clan, and most of the Dragon Fong squad members escaped. Although some of them died in the previous battle, the casualties were not too heavy. As for the other group of mercenaries led by Lin Hua, they had not fled in this direction from the beginning. Now no one knew where they had run off to. At least, Long Do did not see them. But when he turned his head and looked at the manor that was already covered in raging flames, and the main building in the middle of the manor was slowly collapsing, he couldn't help but think of a puzzling question. The question was, is Iam really dead? From the situation at that time, Iam should have died without a doubt. After all, her whole body fell into the collapsed building, and the sky was filled with flames and bomb fragments. Let alone burning her, she should have been crushed into meat paste. But if Iam was dead, why didn't the heartbeat bomb detonate? Logically speaking, the big bomb that killed Ryudo several times should have detonated when Iam's heart stopped beating and directly destroyed everything around her. That was the normal situation. Was there a problem with the bomb? Why didn't it detonate? Or, the woman who rejected Ryudo's help at the last moment wasn't dead? As a cool breeze blew by, the flames in the manor burned even more fiercely, and the huge sixth sky devil in the sky slowly sailed away. Although the fire in the manor burned fiercely, the battle inside and outside gradually subsided, and everything seemed to have returned to normal. Chapter 366. After that day, a lot of things had changed. After losing Iam, the Tenmu group became Nicholas. He and the fake golden heron Shinzo Tanagawa occupied the unfettered Sky Tower in an attempt to rebuild their own hegemony. However, Ryudo, who was tricked by the bastard Nicola, naturally wouldn't let them go. On the third night, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Tanagawa died of a heart attack in his own residence. The fake Prime Minister thus came to an end. The ones in charge of taking over his job were two other golden herons, or golden herons, who had been arranged by Rui Kaneshiro and Kyoji Tsukimi. They were also loyal to the Yatsuki and the Black Hand Alliance. After the new Prime Minister came to power, he immediately overturned the previous Extreme Drive-Out Act and slowly calmed down the storm involving extreme power. After that, Colored Glaze used the same method as Iam and stuffed a large number of his own people into the Diet, Parliament, and other places. He controlled all these official institutions in his own hands. As for the members of the old era who disobeyed and didn't support him, most of them were massacred. Almost all of them were packed up and thrown into Tokyo Bay by the Black Hand Alliance. For a time, the whole of Tokyo was swept by a bloody storm invisible to ordinary people. A large number of officials, nobles, and upper-class people were dealt with by Yatsuki and the Black Hand Alliance. Countless people were killed, and those who survived almost all wagged their tails and begged for mercy to the new rulers, begging for their lives. Fortunately, Ryudo didn't need to worry about these things. Naturally, Rui and the others would take care of it properly. On the morning of the 7th day, the area of the manor that had been bombed by the earth-shattering battle had been cleaned up by more than half. From the remains of the collapsed and scorched building, people found a corpse. It was a corpse that was missing a right arm. Before death, the face seemed to be filled with fear and unwillingness. There was no doubt that this corpse came from the head of the Tenmu Group's secret department. Juan and Ryudo saw with his own eyes that he was involved in the collapsed building. It was reasonable for him to die here. But what was very strange was that there was no corpse of the other person found at the scene. Ryudo stood aside and watched with a complicated expression on his face as the workers from Yamakata Crow dug out the giant heartbeat bomb, buried in the ground, and carefully carried it away. The huge bomb was almost the size of an entire house. It was no wonder that the explosion range could affect the entire manor. After the professional bomb disposal personnel removed the detonation system, the big guy that was deliberately shaped like a heart was slowly carried away, amidst the exclamations of the group of people. According to the investigation of the bomb disposal personnel, the detonation system of the bomb had been operating normally before, and it also had a built-in power source, so it would not fail to detonate due to a power failure. Are you still doubtful? As Ryudo watched the huge bomb being carried away, a feminine voice came from behind him. Yes. Ryudo turned to look at Ruehui and said with a smile, "It's hard not to be puzzled by this scene. No one can tell whether she's dead or alive. Now it seems that she's dead. Otherwise, she wouldn't have let Nicholas die so easily." Ruehui also turned to look at the hollowed-out villa area not far away, then shook her head slightly. According to the latest intelligence, the former head of the weapons department, who betrayed the Tenmu group, died 5 hours ago on the snowy Siberian tundra. The people who killed Nicholas were his 2 former colleagues, the head of the guards department, Lin Hua, and the head of the pharmacology department, Yomi. They hung Nicholas's body, which was riddled with holes, on the top of Mount Elbrus, the highest mountain in the Northland, as a consolation for the big boss of the Heavenly Eye group, who had been killed by the traitor. From this point of view, Lin Hua and the others should have thought that Ayam was dead, and if Ayam was still alive, she definitely wouldn't have simply shot Nicholas to death. But even so, there were some things that couldn't be explained this way, because the body of the supposedly dead person wasn't found under the burned villa. There was a body in the Mirage Nunnery that fell at about the same time, but Ayam's body wasn't. And from the deep excavation of the wreckage of the villa, there wasn't any secret passage under the villa that could escape. The most important thing was that the heartbeat bomb didn't activate. The bomb's setting was that as soon as Ayam's heartbeat stopped, the chip in her heart would immediately send out a signal to detonate it. Until it was dug out, all the functions of the heartbeat bomb were still normal. In other words, the moment Ayam died, this thing should have already exploded. But it didn't. This thing didn't detonate at all, which meant that Ayam's heart didn't stop beating. No one knew if she was alive or dead. Other than being mysterious or strange, it was really difficult to use normal logic to describe this situation. At this time, Ruehui smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, let's think about it more simply. Maybe her body was burned into charcoal and mixed with the wreckage of the building, so we couldn't find it." That's true, but the body in the Mirage Nunnery is still intact. Even if Ayam was burned, there shouldn't be no trace left. Then we can only suspect that she turned into a butterfly in the fire and flew to another world. Looking at the dark scorched land not far away, Ruehui seemed to recall the scene of her playing with Ayam by the lake. That mature little girl, that witch who killed without batting an eyelid, that descendant of the Tianmu clan that had been entangled with the Kamiyoshi clan for hundreds of years, did she really disappear just like that? If Ayam was really dead, although Ruehui felt a little sad, she should be happy on the whole. After all, this was a huge problem. But the current situation made her feel the same as Ryudo. She felt very complicated, and she couldn't figure out if that person was truly dead or not. However, it was meaningless for the two of them to think about it now. After all, whether Ayam was dead or alive wasn't up to them to decide. Before Ayam appeared, they had to live normally. So when Ryudo and Ruehui left the manor, the latter joked, "Things here are almost over. It's time for you to accompany Colored Glaze and the others to live a normal life." For such a long time, Ryudo had spent most of his time on the Tianmu group. Now that the Tianmu group had fallen apart, he could finally put down some of the tasks on his shoulders. Although there were still 2 ministers led by the Defense Department and the Pharmacy Department leading the remaining troops. However, the power of that group was no longer what it used to be, and without Yongji's presence, they couldn't stir up any big waves. Most importantly, the Yatsuki was completely under the control of Ruehui and Kyoji. In addition, after supporting the third Jinlu to become the prime minister, she was almost at the point where she could do whatever she wanted in the country. On the surface, the government forces, the secret Black Hand Alliance, plus the division of the Tianmu group, and the disappearance of the leader. Now Ryudo could indeed take a good rest. He didn't need to risk his life for the time being. Live a normal life. By the way, I've forgotten what it feels like. After hearing Ruehui's words, Ryudo leaned back and slumped in the back seat of the car, with a helpless expression on his face. Ever since Long Do had transmigrated to this world, he had been plotting every single day. Every single day, he had been fighting for his life. Every single day, he had been fighting to survive. This suddenly told him that the danger had basically been eliminated, and he could live a good life. He really wasn't used to it. Immediately, Ruehui covered her mouth and laughed. I see. Why don't you marry Colored Glaze first, and then quickly give birth to a big fat boy for me to take care of? Marry? Although Ruehui said it in a joking tone, Ryudo could hear that she was serious. After all, Yunyan was pregnant, and soon her stomach would swell. It wouldn't be good for her to be an unmarried mother, so it was better to get married first. And the most important thing was that since Yunyan was pregnant, Ruehui naturally didn't want her daughter, Colored Glaze, to fall behind. She definitely hoped that Colored Glaze could also have a happy ending with her son-in-law, as soon as possible. So the first thing to do was to get married. As long as they got married, they could live together legitimately. It was not a problem to have 2 children in 3 years. Besides, Ruehui liked children, so she naturally hoped to have grandchildren as soon as possible. But thinking about it carefully, Ryudo was only 17 years old now, and the youngest, Dunya, was only 16 years old. If they got married so early, could they really get a marriage certificate? No, the most important thing was that Ryudo had 3 wives. How could they do it? After raising his doubts to Ruehui, Ruehui smiled and said, Don't tell me you are only thinking about this now? I was thinking about getting a citizenship from the Middle East, although it seemed troublesome after checking it. You don't have to make it so troublesome. I have revised the marriage law here. After a week, you can legally marry 3 wives in Japan. And the legal marriage age for men has been pushed to 17 years old, which happens to meet your conditions. What? Do you have to play so big? The moment he heard this sentence, Ryudo couldn't help but cover his face. He seemed to be a little speechless at Ruehui's abuse of power for personal gain. In order to let her daughter and son-in-law get married here smoothly, she even directly revised the marriage law. From a certain point of view, Ruehui was not inferior to Ryudo in terms of lawlessness. But since his mother-in-law was ready to let her daughter get married, Ryudo couldn't say no as a man. But before getting married, he had one more thing to do. That was to go to the 3 families to propose to the 3 young ladies. This was not an easy job. Chapter 367. Marriage proposal. For some people, maybe just a matter between the man and the woman. But in these big families in Tokyo, marriage proposal was not just a matter between the man and the woman. In addition to the woman herself agreeing, they also needed to get the permission of their family, which was the marriage proposal. Of course, although Ryudo felt a little tired of this cumbersome process, he had nothing to say about it. After all, this was the tradition. When proposing marriage, they still had to respect the woman's family. So in an afternoon a few days later, Ryudo dressed up in his most normal suit in the Rulon Group headquarters. It was rare for him to be a serious young man. Voila! At this moment, the door of the room opened, and a man with a square face walked in with stiff steps. Because today, he accompanied his son to propose marriage, the former Rulon Group leader, Tong Shin Kazuma, also wore a set of very serious clothes. In addition to the very serious clothes, he also let people comb his hair neatly, meticulously, and even put on a hair wax. He also deliberately wore a pair of infinity glasses to cover his fierce eyes. How to say, After this treatment, the original extreme tough man, Tongshin Kazuma, had become a relatively normal middle-aged father, although he was obviously not very comfortable with this outfit. After entering the room, he said to his son, "Are you ready? The car is already waiting at the door." "No problem, we can leave at any time." Ryudo, who also wore infinity glasses, reached out and moved the thing on the bridge of his nose, and showed a "you are also like this" smile to his father. After all, the fierce eyes were not just Kazuma's problem. Ryudo's eyes were enough to scare children, so in order not to bring trouble to the in-laws, he still had to wear a pair of glasses to cover it. In this way, the father and son brought some very precious gifts and drove together to the Tsukuminari villa. Sitting in the driver's seat, Narukai played warm music, while Kazuma and Ryudo in the back seat were speechless. Speaking of which, Ryudo hadn't seen his 3 future wives for a while. After the previous commotion, Colored Glaze, Yunyen, and Dunya all returned to their respective homes. After all, the 3 of them were still virgins in name. It was somewhat unreasonable for them to always stay in the man's house. In particular, Yunyen was now pregnant, and the headquarters of the Rulon group was full of smelly men. Naturally, her parents, Gongxi and Jinshin, hoped that their daughter would go home and take care of the baby. According to the convention in Tokyo, before the marriage proposal was completed, the male and female protagonists could not meet. Therefore, during the few days he was preparing for the marriage proposal, Ryudo could only text and call the 3 women every day, trying out the bitterness of being in a long-distance relationship. At this time, Ryudo, who was sitting in the back seat, smiled and said, "Dad, are you nervous?" Kazuma snorted and said, "A man, it's just a marriage proposal. What's there to be nervous about? But I heard that there are a lot of people in the 3 families. If they stand in a row, they might fill up the entire field. How are you going to deal with it?" The moment he heard this sentence, Kazuma's expression suddenly became a bit stiff. But he still firmly replied, "Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. No matter what, don't forget your manners." Speaking of which, Kazuma actually didn't experience this kind of situation. After all, when he married Ryudo's mother, Yumi, he didn't go through the normal process. And Kazuma didn't have a father, and Yumi didn't have a good relationship with her family, which saved a lot of trouble. And just as the father and son were sitting in the car and imagining the scene, in the master room of the Tsukujiri villa, Tsukujiri Kyoji was bent over the desk, as if he was writing something. Unlike usual, the male master of the Tsukujiri family now had an excited and sinister expression on his face. This was completely different from the usual gentle and elegant Tsukujiri group CEO. Hee ha ha ha. After writing something unknown, Kyoji couldn't help but pick up the paper and laugh. "It's over. Done. Let's see what that brat is going to do next." Just as Gongxi was laughing like a maniac, Jinshin frowned and said, "Dear, isn't it inappropriate for us to do this?" "Not good. What's not good about it?" "That, Ryudo, Koen definitely can't answer the questions on this paper, right? Isn't this difficult?" At this moment, Shinkoto looked at the paper in Kyoji's hand. There were 10 questions written on it, and they covered philosophy, cognitive science, mathematics, neurophysiology, psychology, computer science, information theory, cybernetics, indeterminacy, and so on. According to Kyoji, during the marriage proposal process, he would use the questions on this paper as a test for Ryudo. Ryudo had to answer all the questions to be able to see Yunyen and propose marriage. What if he can't answer them? Then I'm sorry. You should go back and study, read a few more books, and wait until you have the talent to match the daughter of the Tsukujiri Corporation's CEO before proposing marriage. Logically speaking, it was normal for the father-in-law to test the son-in-law during the marriage proposal process. But the problem was that Kyoji's test was the kind that he didn't want anyone to pass. Everyone knew that Long Do was just a high school student. Moreover, he was a second-year high school student who dropped out of school halfway. Moreover, he didn't study much and couldn't even recognize all 29 English letters. How could such a young man answer so many profound questions that involved so many subjects? Wasn't this purposely making things difficult? I'm purposely making things difficult for him. After hearing his wife say this, Kyoji couldn't help but snort and curse. Who told that brat to get Union pregnant? Union is only 18 years old. She's already a mother. This is ridiculous. When he said this, Kyoji's face became worse and worse. He even felt like he was about to explode in anger. But this was to be expected. After all, any father who knew that his daughter had a child before marriage wouldn't be happy. Not to mention that the one who did it was an extremely stinky hoodlum. It was like his own vegetables being eaten by a pig. So when Gongsi heard that Ryu-do was coming to propose, he was definitely unhappy. The feeling wasn't inferior to being ridden on by someone who wanted to take a dump, and also being asked for toilet paper. Not only that, because Gongsi knew that Long-do's temper wasn't very good, he was afraid that Long-do would directly kidnap him if he didn't pass the test. Gongsi also called all the aunties of the Tsuchikami family over to prevent Long-do from getting angry. In a while, in the spacious main hall, there would be hundreds of people watching his father-in-law test the woman. He didn't believe that Ryudo would have the nerve to get angry in front of everyone. Ryudo Kiryu, I don't believe that you won't fall this time. I must let you know that it's not so easy to be the son-in-law of the Tsukujiri Corporation. Standing on the roof and looking at the car that belonged to the Rulon group slowly approaching, Kyoji raised the corner of his mouth and revealed a very confident smile. However, just as the second father-in-law was about to give his son-in-law a huge surprise, Kazuma and Ryudo finally arrived at the Tsukujiri villa. After arranging for Narukai to carry the bags, the father and son walked side by side to the main hall under the guidance of the housekeeper. Ryudo was very familiar with this Tsukujiri villa. After all, he didn't know how many times he had been here. But even so, it was the first time he saw so many people sitting in the main hall. Oh, is this our family's new son-in-law? He's so handsome. Isn't that so? That's the famous Tong Sheng dragon fighting monarch. That's amazing. But I heard that he seems to have some relationship with the eldest daughter of the Kamiyoshi and Saito family? Is that okay? It doesn't matter. It's normal to have 3 wives and 4 concubines in our circle, as long as Yunyan doesn't become a concubine. Jabber 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 jabber. When Ryudo and Kazuma arrived at the main hall, what greeted them was a huge storm of public opinion and hundreds of gazes. Well, how should I put it? Strictly speaking, the members of the Tsukujiri family who were gathered here didn't have any ill intentions towards Ryudo. After all, he was their son-in-law. However, the way they were judging him was quite annoying. This feeling was like going back to your hometown for Chinese New Year, and the uncles and aunties at home surrounded you at the dinner table. Those who understood this feeling would naturally understand. Damn, there really was a scene of uncles and aunties all over the playground. Suddenly, Ryudo couldn't help but look at his old man, and a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes. But after all, this was the Tsukujiri family, and the 2 of them were here to propose marriage, so they could only walk forward with a stiff smile on their faces. From time to time, they had to deal with the distant relatives who came up to greet them enthusiastically. Ryudo walked along the short path of tens of meters with great difficulty. He felt like a monkey in a zoo, being warmly looked at by tourists from all directions. But fortunately, the 2 masters of the Tsukujiri family, Tsukujiri Kyoji and Tsukujiri Jinchin, were waiting in the middle of the main hall. When Jinchin saw her son-in-law coming, she immediately went over and warmly invited the father and son to sit in the middle. Her young face had an expression that said, the more a mother-in-law looks at her son-in-law, the more she likes him. As for Kyoji, on the surface, he had a smiling face, but Ryudo felt that his smile contained 3 parts sarcasm, 3 parts excitement, 3 parts sinister, and 91 parts malicious intent. What kind of trick was this guy planning to play today? Because he had dealt with too many sinister people. People like Kyoji, who couldn't hide things on his face, naturally couldn't escape Ryudo's discerning eyes. As for what this father-in-law number 2 was planning to do, when he took out a large test paper filled with questions, Ryudo finally understood. Chapter 368. Ahem, everyone, friends and family. I'm very happy to be able to gather with you today and participate in the Tsukimi family's traditional marriage proposal test. After Ryudo and his son were seated, Kyoji slowly stood up from the host's seat and spoke to the large group of gossiping women in the hall. Marriage proposal test? The moment Ryudo and Kazuma heard this special term, they couldn't help but look at each other. They both saw the surprise in each other's eyes. After that, Kyoji arranged for the servants to distribute the test paper full of questions to friends and family, as well as to Ryudo and his son. Kazuma looked at the test paper full of strange questions in his hand and paused for a second. Then, he had an expression of disbelief. Obviously, the former team leader of the Rulon group couldn't imagine that his son was here to propose a marriage. Why did it suddenly become a scientific research test? The most important thing was that the questions written on the paper were all top-level problems in philosophy, mathematics, psychology, and other fields. Forget about Ryudo, who was just a high school student. Even a PhD professor, who specialized in these things, might not be able to answer them. Wasn't this deliberately making things difficult for people? What was even stranger was that the group of relatives and friends who came to watch the ceremony, such as first uncle, second uncle, third uncle, fourth aunt, fifth aunt, and so on, seemed to be able to understand the things on the examination papers. It was an eye-opener. Oh, isn't this the Sitapan conjecture? Although it has been solved, it's still quite a famous problem in the mathematics world. The relationship between Wittgenstein philosophy and artificial intelligence philosophy. Such a deep research topic, can a young man really answer it? Also, what did the Rorschach inkblot test reflect on the relationship between psychoanalysis theory? Wasn't this a topic discussed at the Melbourne Psychology Conference not long ago? Don't be fooled by the looks of these middle-aged and elderly people who gathered here. All of them looked like aunties selling vegetables or uncles walking their birds. However, when they saw the difficult questions on these examination papers, they immediately transformed into experts and professors and began to comment on them. The Tsukimi family was a very famous scientific family. Most of the people in the family were either professors or scholars. Their breadth and depth of knowledge was absolutely unquestionable. This time, the group of people invited by Kyoji were even the elites of the family. A few of them even won the Gunpowder Bomb Science Award. So when they saw the test paper, they were naturally able to comment. Of course, this group of academic elites was deliberately invited by Kyoji to watch Ryudo make a fool of himself. What should I do? Ryudo, can he pass this test? Looking at the group of gossipy women, who started to discuss those incomprehensible questions, Yima hurriedly turned his head to look at the son he was proud of. Then, the old man saw a confident smile appear on Long Do's face. Yes, a confident smile. Even in the face of such a complicated test paper, the leader of the Black Hand Alliance was still brimming with confidence, as if he had already seen through everything. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect my son to be a great scientist. Facing such a complicated question, he could still calmly give an answer. Then Kazuma whispered to Ryudo, I didn't expect you to have such high academic attainments. I underestimated you. Kazuma himself wasn't educated, so he especially admired those who were educated. If that educated person happened to be his son, then it would be even better. He felt like he had taken advantage of the situation. Academic attainments? What do you mean? However, when Long Do heard his father's words that were filled with admiration, he looked at him in confusion. The reason why you're so confident, isn't it because you think you can answer these questions? How is that possible? I can't even understand the things on this paper. It's like a book from heaven. When he heard his son's words, Kazuma's slightly admiring expression was instantly shattered. Good heavens! Ima thought that Long Do was showing this expression because he was confident, but he didn't expect that he couldn't understand it at all. If you don't understand at all, then why are you so happy? If there weren't so many gossipy women staring at the father and son, Yima really wanted to say this to his son. Just when the former leader of the Rulon group couldn't hold it in anymore, Kyoji, who was sitting in the main seat, looked at the man who might become his future son-in-law with a happy expression. Does Kyoji like Ryudo? Of course he doesn't. That's why he deliberately prepared these questions that a high school student couldn't answer. It was to embarrass this kid in front of everyone. Does Ryudo know Kyoji's intention? Of course he knows, it's clear with a glance. Good heavens, are you trying to show me who's boss? Okay, as you wish. Looking at Tsukujiri Kyoji's joyful expression, as if he couldn't answer Longdo's question, as well as the expectant expressions of the surrounding aunties, the left corner of Longdo's mouth slightly raised, revealing a special smile. People who were familiar with him knew that when Ryudo showed this smile, it meant his time to show off had begun. Move, I'm going to show off. Ahem. Just when Gongxi was about to enjoy Ryudo's embarrassed expression, Ryudo cleared his throat slightly, smiled, and said to everyone present, since father-in-law thinks so highly of me, then I will make a fool of myself. What? Is this guy? After feeling Ryu's confidence, the smile on Gongxi's face froze. He originally wanted to watch Ryu make a fool of himself. No way. I gave him a profound question that involved so many subjects. He couldn't possibly think that he could answer it, right? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Thinking of this, Kyoji couldn't help but remind himself. What kind of person is Ryudo Kiryu? You probably don't know what an illiterate person is. I, Kyoji, would only use this word to describe this kind of person, Ryudo Kiryu. I always say that Ryudo Kiryu isn't stupid. He's actually quite smart. But he just doesn't want to study hard. Indeed, that guy is an extreme boss. He has to deal with a lot of practical problems, that's right. But even so, he can't be illiterate. Especially when he heard that this guy couldn't even recognize all the English letters. Kyoji almost coughed up blood on the spot. High school student. This is the second year of the first high school. Can't recognize all the English letters? This kind of stupid, illiterate person wants to be the son-in-law of the Tsukini family? Then how can our family meet people in the future? What? You're saying that this kind of illiterate Ryudo Kiryu can answer all the questions I gave him? Nonsense. He can't even do a high school exam. How can he answer a PhD level question? I, Kyoji Tsukujiri, will leave my words here. If Dragon Fight can solve all these questions today, I, Kyoji Tsukujiri, will eat this exam paper on the spot. Eat the whole paper. Unknowingly, Gongxi couldn't help but think this, and made a ruthless vow. Unfortunately, although Ryudo was half illiterate, he had wisdom level 5. And he was an illiterate person who was unique in terms of cheating. Under the gaze of hundreds of people, Ryudo first cleared his throat, then began to answer the first question. Regarding the Sitapan conjecture, the core problem is that for all n-top graphs, there is a clique of k-tops, or an independent set of l-tops. The smallest natural number n with this property is called a Ramsey number, and it is described in the theory of coloring. When Ryudo's confusing words came out of his mouth, Gongxi's face turned green. It was as if his wife had run away with someone else. Kyoji was originally a top talent in mathematics, philosophy, psychology, mechanical science, and many other fields. Since he could come up with these questions, it meant that he was very knowledgeable in this area. In this situation, Gongxi only needed to listen for a bit to know that Longdo's answer was on point. When he said, "To solve this conjecture, you only need to use the Ramsey two-coloring theorem in reverse inference mathematics to prove it. The process is as follows." The CEO of Tsukujiri Group almost fell off his chair. "Hey, be careful, you can't sit still." Junchin quickly supported her husband, who almost fell to the ground. She looked at his pale face and couldn't help but ask, "What? Ryudo-san's answer is ridiculously wrong? Why do you sound like this?" Junchin herself was in the entertainment industry, so she naturally didn't understand these complex academic questions. However, after seeing her husband's embarrassed look, she seemed to have the wrong idea. She thought Ryudo was ridiculously wrong. After Kyoji was helped up, he reached out and pushed up his glasses that were already soaked in sweat. He awkwardly said, "No, nothing, let's look at the next question." The question just now is about mathematics. Maybe Ryudo knows a lot about mathematics? The next question was about philosophy. He definitely didn't know anything about philosophy. The essence of Wittgenstein's philosophy is that it believes that the world is the collection of everything. Even the concept outside the world is a part of the world. The world exists in thinking. If people don't think, they can't solve problems. This extends to poof. When Kyoji heard Ryudo explain a profound philosophical question in front of everyone, Kyoji felt his insides heat up and almost spat out blood. You mother****. Are you really Ryudo Kiryu? Kyoji felt like he was drunk when he saw the person he thought was ignorant and couldn't even recognize the alphabet give a speech and explanation in front of a group of professors. Especially when Ryudo easily solved the second, third, fourth, and even the last question. Kyoji fell to the ground like a pile of mud. He didn't even have the strength to speak. His eyes became empty, and his mind went blank. At the last moment, the only thing Kyoji thought about was, how should he swallow the test paper in his hand? Would it taste better if he dipped it in ketchup? You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.